2024 Independence Township Planning Commission meeting. Welcome, everybody. With that, let's please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You want to do roll call, Brian?
Yeah, I can do it.
Okay, go ahead.
Ms. Billings,
Present.
Mr. Borsheim,
Here.
Mr. Galley,
Here.
Mr. Pytel,
Here.
Mr. Ritchie,
Here.
Mr. Scarborough,
Here.
and Mr. Sucher.
Here. Okay, we have a full planning commission board here tonight. Our township consultants are here, and we have a couple of items on the agenda tonight. With that, can we have a review of the agenda and a motion, please?
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
Support. We have motion and support. All in favor?
Should we put officer elections in there?
It
This
is
is
number
the
one.
first item, item number 1, under full business.
Oh, small print, sorry.
All right.
It's okay, I asked him yesterday, I texted him, I go, hey, shouldn't we have this? Because it's on there, number 1.
Okay, sorry for the interruption.
Okay, we have a motion and a second still on the table. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Seeing none, motion carries 7-0. We usually have a section, public comment for items not on the agenda this evening. We do have 3 items on the agenda. Is there anybody present in the audience that would like to comment on something that is not on tonight's agenda? Again, not on tonight's agenda. Seeing none, we have a small online presence. There's 4 or 5 folks. Anybody online tonight that wishes to speak on something that is not on our posted agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment for items that are not listed. So is this correct? There's 3 public hearings, or
No,
that should just be new business?
yeah.
Okay, because we did the public hearing on item 2 last time, correct?
Yeah, but we're doing I reposted it.
Additional, okay. So we have a little office keeping to do first. Just a new item on tonight's agenda is election of officers. Every year we elect officers to sit on the planning commission, president, vice president, and secretary. We have some new members present here. Typically what we do is just offer up to somebody to nominate folks. Obviously, if you're nominated, you do not have to accept serving if you wish not to. So with that, I'll open it up to the commission.
Yes, I'd like to make a nomination.
Okay.
I'd like to nominate William Scarborough for, is it chair or president?
Chair.
That's what I thought.
I'll second that.
Okay. Anybody else?
You need to ask for any other nominations.
Yes, any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Galley.
I'll support it.
Question, Mr. Ottman. I mean, usually in the past when we've done this, it's kind of been a continuation of slate kind of thing. Would you recommend I do one at a time, or?
I think that when you have 2
Yeah.
that's usually because we've only had nominations for
One person.
one person for each office, so.
Yeah, which is fine. I mean, I'm just asking a question. Okay, anybody else on the commission wish to nominate somebody?
I'd just like to say I will reluctantly accept the nomination. Might appear unusual for somebody new on a planning commission, but I have, as a lot of you know, a lot of experience on a prior planning commission. I was probably chairman for total, I'm guessing 6 years. And so, I think I have, I think I can get up to speed pretty quick and handle it.
Thank you, Mr. Scarborough. I guess since he spoke, I'll just speak a little bit. I've been on the planning commission for 12 years. I've probably been vice chair, I don't know, 8 or 10 years or so. I guess in my view, it's just running an efficient meeting and allowing everybody to speak. Nobody's vote on this panel and nobody's opinion on this panel matters more than any one individual, in my opinion. We're all here to speak our mind and ask all our questions and vote our conscience on what we all think is individually best for the township. So I'm happy to be serving with the new folks and good to see some of the old folks. So I guess with that,
I think
Just
we simply have a.
roll call on between the two who each would pick. I guess Brian can roll call that.
You have to tell them you're voting for it all.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is for Mr. Scarborough as.
Yes, let's start with him. He was
Okay,
first.
yeah,
He
that's
was
fine.
nominated first, so
Yeah,
he'll go.
that's fine.
Uh,
Okay,
Ms.
roll call vote, please.
Okay, Ms. Billings,
Yes.
Mr. Borsheim,
No?
Mr. Galley,
No.
Mr. Pytel,
No.
Mr. Ritchie,
Yes.
Mr. Scarborough,
No, yes.
and Mr. Sucher.
Yes.
So that would carry, right? That was 4,
4.
correct?
Yep.
All right, congratulations, Mr. Scarborough.
Thank you.
I guess since I'm sitting here, I'll just finish this nomination thing and then I'll switch seats with you. How about that?
You don't have
That's
to.
okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right,
Stay here.
you'll keep that seat warm tonight? Okay, great. Okay, second item then would be nominations for vice chair. Anybody on the commission nominations for vice chair?
I'd like to nominate Brian Galley for vice chair.
I'll second.
Okay. Mr. Galley has first and a second for vice. Anybody else?
Ready?
Roll call, please.
Ms. Billings,
Yes.
Mr. Borsheim,
Yes.
Mr. Galley,
Yes.
Mr. Pytel,
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie,
Yes.
Mr. Scarborough,
Yes.
and Mr. Sucher.
Yes.
Okay, third position would be secretary. I guess staff can jump in here if I misspeak, but I know secretary of the commission in the old days used to carry a lot of weight because they were the ones responsible with actually writing the minutes. We now have a service that goes back and listens to the tape and watches the video and records the minutes. Our last secretary who served, very loyally and admirably, in my opinion, Ms. Tully, she would diligently go through the notes and bring up any abnormalities she thought each week. So I guess that's what I would view the job, is that, you don't have to take notes during the meeting, you just kind of have to be the one who spearheads reviewing the minutes, in my opinion. So, any nominations?
And they do need to sign the minutes when they're approved.
Sign the minutes for the township record, okay?
Yeah, they used to do historically a roll call on all the motions too, but that's something I can do too, so it's
Yeah.
not a big deal. Since I do it for ZBA.
Any nominations for secretary? And Mr. Ritchie, you can't serve, correct, or no? Yes, can you?
I don't think so.
The
No,
liaison,
as the
I'm supposed
township.
to hold one of the offices. so.
Any volunteers?
I'll volunteer.
Good.
Okay. We have a volunteer. Thank you so much for stepping up.
It's good to know that there's a service that captures all of this, so,
Why don't we go ahead and do a roll call, please?
Ms.
Brian?
Billings,
yes.
Mr. Borsheim,
Yes.
Mr. Galley,
Yes.
Mr. Pytel,
Yes.
Mr. Ritchie,
Yes.
Mr. Scarborough,
Yes.
and Mr. Sucher.
Yes.
So we would have Mr. Scarborough as our new chair, Mr. Galley, 11th year vice chair, and Ms. Billings as our new secretary. Congratulations, everybody, and
Congratulations.
look forward to working with everybody.
Thank you.
So this is a public hearing, again, you said? Item
Yes,
2?
this is item
You
2.
You gonna let Mr. Scarborough take over now? or-
If he wants to switch, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Well, I'm just saying, he should run the
Yeah.
meeting now.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
worry about changing
I mean-
seats.
fine. Okay, yeah. In case you have
So
to
as-
beat somebody down with the gavel.
As Brian mentioned, this is a public hearing. PC file number 2023-013. Triad Investments, the address is 4555 Pelton Road. This is, the purpose is, it's a special land use and amended final site plan approval for a sit-down restaurant at the location commonly referred to as Mel's Grill. Would the applicant like to start off with any additional comments from prior meetings?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Greg Need. I'm with the firm of Ackus and Need, Allen and Rentroff. We're representing the applicant, along with my partners Kelly Allen and Chris Tower. The applicants are here, Jim and Joe O'Hearn and Jacob Habermas, and our architect Keith Lutz. At the November meeting, there was a large turnout and show of support for this project. The room was packed and almost all the comments were positive. Many people noted how the applicants and their family are first-class restaurant operators in the township with Mel's Grill and Buckshots. They've made significant contributions to Pine Knob Elementary and other Clarkston causes. They are respected members of the community. They live in the area, their kids go to school here, and they will continue to have a positive impact on Clarkston. There were a few concerns raised by the neighbors at the November meeting and some of the commissioners. The matter was postponed to tonight to allow my clients to meet with those neighbors that were willing to meet, to understand their concerns and try to address them, and also to allow us to prepare a comprehensive site plan that included all the additional items that we verbally brought up at the November meeting. Over the last 2.5 months, they have done so. They've met with those neighbors that wanted to meet. The concerns were basically sound issues, parking issues, and lighting. On the sound, we changed the site plan to add the 6-foot-tall Syntec fence on the western border. That fence is meant to mitigate noise from reaching the residential areas. In addition to the fence, they'll be planting some arborvitae to create a sound mitigating buffer, and we'll be placing signage along the buffer asking people to please respect the neighbors and keep noise to a minimum. And the details on the fence and the sound buffer are included with the materials that we submitted. One of the neighbors also expressed a concern about lighting in the parking lot, and the applicants met with that neighbor and assured them that the lighting is not changing because of this use, but that they will be sure to angle the lighting so it doesn't project onto that neighbor's house. As to parking, we were asked by the planning consultant to clarify the number of seats proposed in the main restaurant. There are 83. The total parking calculations are on the site plan. Between the fireside kitchen on the main level and the lower level, there are 70 spaces required, and we're providing 73. Also, and very importantly, the hours of operation for Fireside Grill and the lower level will not overlap with those of Mel's Grill, so there won't be any issue with regard to adequacy of parking. We've also committed to address parking by posting signage and putting cameras into the parking lot. If there is an issue with traffic or parking spilling over to the residential streets, that will be monitored by their staff. They will go out there and explain to people that they shouldn't park on the residential streets. We don't think that's going to be an issue because parking has been adequate up till now, but they are willing to also do that. And all of these things that I'm talking about, we are more than willing to put those in writing as Mr. Carlisle recommended. At your last meeting, those of you that were here, it was stressed the importance of collaborating with the neighbors on the project. We took that message to heart. They met with as many neighbors as we could, made changes to the plans, and they have been and will always be willing to meet with the neighbors into the future to address any problems that may arise. With all that, we ask that you grant approval of the special land use and the amended site plan, and either I or our architect or my clients are more than willing to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you very much for hearing us out.
Thank you. What I'd like to do is ask Mr. Carlisle if he has anything to add, and then after that, we'll open the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Mr. Need has done a good job of describing some of the changes that they've made. There's several observations that we would like to add to that. One of the things I do want to caution the Planning Commission is you are approving a use. You're not approving who the applicants are. And let's just make that, let's make that understandable that when you have a special land use, and I have no doubt about the things that these gentlemen have done for this community and the kind of operation that they've run over at Buckshots, but you are approving the land use, and that's within your authority. A special land use by the ordinance, and by any ordinance, and by state law, gives you discretion to approve based on standards in the ordinance. And not all special land uses get approved, even though they're listed as a special land use in a given zoning district. That's why we have standards in the ordinance for you to make the determination as to whether it meets the standards in the ordinance. And if you notice, I went through in extensive detail enumerating those standards, and I'm not going to read through those tonight because you've had my report, I think, for close to a week. You had my report before the commission did. But they are stringent. It's a high standard to make a determination as to whether a special land use should be approved. So it is a discretionary determination on the part of the Planning Commission. I want to clarify one thing. This is an amended final site plan also. So I think I may have referred to a conceptual site plan in a previous review, but this is an amended final site plan. So if you were to make a final decision tonight, this would be it. You would not be seeing this again. So both a special land use and a final site plan. Now, you don't have to do that. You have other things you can do, but I just want to make sure the commission is aware of what they're doing tonight. The clarifications that we asked for were provided. One of the questions that has arisen as to how effective a sound wall of this nature will be. I researched this internally. We have people in our office that are knowledgeable about these things. The most effective sound barriers that you can erect is a solid concrete wall. So from that standpoint, the Simtex system is as good as any solid concrete wall. As you see the sound walls along, in fact, you use the sound walls, I think, along some of the expressways. I can only rely upon the manufacturer's literature, which I did consult. I had one of my landscape architects look it over for me and confirm that as a sound barrier, it's more effective than a wooden wall, a wooden fence, for example, because there's openings in it. Sound will travel. It will generally travel in a fairly straight line until it reaches and hits something, And in this case, it's going to bounce off that wall. In some cases, it's going to go over that wall. But as far as it's definitely better than not having any sound attenuation there. It's having a solid concrete wall. The other thing about it is textured, which then tends to scatter that sound once it hits that wall. So that's also a positive thing. A couple things that I will note is that the problem with the approach is that you have a site that's open on both ends, in which there's residential land use on both sides. And so, if anything, this site should be enclosed, definitely on the south, and we're recommending that along the access drive on the north side, internally, that they erect a 4-foot-high wall in that location. Now, why do I say 4-foot-high wall? Because that's in a front yard setback, and that's what the ordinance requires. There's also an area to the neighbor to the west that the wall cannot be 6 feet in that one section in the front yard setback. That's the closest to Pelton, because our ordinance requires it to be no greater than 4 feet. I am a little concerned about visibility coming out of that, even with a 4-foot wall, because people are going to be turning out of this, and there'll be cars coming down Pelton, and there is a concern that there will be an obstruction of visibility at that location. There are other treatments that could be done. That wall could be turned. There could be landscaping placed there that would give a little bit more of a filtered view, but taking a wall all the way out to Pelton is going to be a problem, in my opinion. There's several other things that the commission needs to make a determination of. One, of course, you have to make sure, you have to make the determination that this meets the intent of the ordinance, not the least of which is the intent of the Office Service 2 District. A lot of history behind this site. This goes back 25 years, more than that, actually. You know, the commission at that time was, you know, approved the Office Service 2 zoning first, and then later on approved the special land use for Mel's Diner, knowing what they were approving. You're not going to see the level of detail in the minutes that you would see today, but I specifically know that was what was approved at the time. That was that Jim Mellema and the Shell family built this building and proposed a Coney Island style restaurant. Whether hours of operation were discussed, I don't know. The records don't, we don't have the records anymore. I don't keep files that long, thank God. But, so anyway, the other issue that the Planning Commission will have to make a determination is that you do have the authority to grant a deviation from parking requirements. We have a provision in the ordinance that gives the Planning Commission that authority to grant a deviation in ordinance requirements. Technically, they need to include all the calculations for both Mel's Diner and for their proposed use. And you're granting the deviation to the number of parking spaces that they are asking for. I think in my previous review, I calculated, I think it was 128 to something like that. But that is within the authority of the Planning Commission, provided you believe that there will be sufficient parking to meet the demand for both of these uses on the site. And I know that they have offered some conditions. The conditions need to be stated by the Planning Commission. This needs to be a condition of your approval, not a private agreement. We don't enforce private agreements. You can attach that to your conditions of approval, but you have to incorporate, you need to make reference to whatever conditions that are that you want to attach to this particular use. The final thing is, I'm not satisfied with the lighting because I have not been supplied with a lighting plan. So the only way we can determine that they meet the current lighting ordinance is if we have a lighting plan. I mentioned that before, and I mentioned it again. So representations to the neighbor are fine, but I need to see a lighting plan because Mr. Daly and Mr. Ritchie know that we updated the lighting ordinance a couple of years ago. It's to make it more strict, especially regarding LED lighting, regarding the color, the nature of the lighting, plus the shielding. We have very specific standards in the ordinance now regarding shielding. I do realize the lights were installed a little while ago, but I can't help the fact that we need to make sure that they meet ordinance requirements. I think that's all the comments that I have at this point. I'll be happy to answer any questions now or at any time.
Go ahead.
I guess, keeping in mind what you said about the conditions and in the site plan, that we're approving it for this site. So any conditions and anything we approve tonight stay with that property, even if the businesses that are in there change.
That's correct.
So if we put stipulations on there that one restaurant can't overlap hours on the other restaurant, that stays with that property,
That's correct.
even if it's not a restaurant?
That would have to be the case, because if you have conflicting businesses, it's going to conflict with the parking
Well,
requirements.
that's what I'm getting at. So it stays there no matter, even if they change the style of business, that
That's
condition
correct.
would stay there. And so I guess to me, the importance of the condition of business hours is what gives us the proper reasoning for, I guess, waiving the parking requirements. Because
Right.
if they're separate entities open at separate times, then we can utilize the full parking lot for each of the entities. Is that
Correct. And it would, yes, so it would apply to any type of business there, whether it's like a hair care place, 4 o'clock would be, would have to be it.
all right? In the other parts of the building from the restaurant? So-
Correct.
I want to jump on that question from Mr. Ritchie if I can for a second. So if the restaurant were to go out of its existence at some point, the new tenant, though, could petition the planning commission to change that?
Always, yes,
I mean, if it was retail, well, we want to go back to normal business hours, and they could come back to planning commission, remove the special land use,
correct.
and turn it back into retail.
That's correct.
But if they would
And,
change it, then they'd have to meet the parking requirements at that time, right?
Right.
On the business hours, so currently, you know, I know hours of operation is a sticking point. Let's say Mel's right now decided we want to be a 24-hour operation like Village Place. They don't have to petition the township, do they?
Oh, absolutely, they do.
They do?
They would have to apply for an amended special land use because that was never approved as part of that plan. And I will, you know, you definitely don't want to go down that road.
I'm just asking a hypothetical question, because they already exist.
I understand,
Yeah.
Well, I guess that's what we're saying.
but I
Hours
can
of
tell you
operation might
that
be
for
one of the
sure they were
criteria.
never approved as a 24-hour operation.
Well, yeah, and, well, you mentioned that their approval and you didn't have all the details in front of you, so I
No.
didn't,
We'd have to
I
really go back
didn't know
through
if that
the-
was a specific
No, I
detail that
mean-
you recalled.
We'd have to go back 25 years of records into the storage
Well, and
barn.
yeah, and I also understand that, you know, any motion in favor of this one, we would obviously put the no overlapping things in it. but
Correct.
I didn't know if they had a pre-existing condition that had to be addressed as
Well, by the mere fact of approving this use, you're creating a potential conflict if that circumstance would occur. And so consequently, you need to place that condition that would apply to the Mel Diner property also.
Crystal clear, got it.
I would interject, I looked at the minutes from the original approval, and it makes no mention of limitation on hours.
Right, I acknowledge that, I know
Yeah.
that.
And I don't believe their site plan submissions mentioned it. There may have been discussion at the meetings, but
Yeah,
I don't believe their site plan submissions mentioned any restriction on hours.
So if approved, this would be a conditional approval based on the hours staggering.
well, if it is approved, it'll be conditioned upon any conditions you place upon it. Whatever they might be.
Regarding your comment on our ability to approve the deviation from parking, is that gotta be specifically spelled out in our motion, that in addition to whatever conditions we're attaching, we are approving a deviation of X
Yeah.
number of parking spaces?
Correct. And when
Okay.
I go back to get my other report, I'll tell you what that number is.
Just wanna make clear of that.
And can I ask a question about the arborvitae's? I drove by there today and I saw the 6-foot wooden fence and it goes down to 4 feet as you approach Pelton. So the arborvitae's would be on the 6-foot section of the new fence.
Correct.
And is there any irrigation for the arborvitae's?
The applicant would have to answer that, I don't know for sure. But by the way, that's also a recommended method to disperse noise too. I mean, we can't rely solely on vegetation to provide the noise barrier. It's just not solid enough. But when you put up a wall and then you soften it with landscaping, it's even more effective.
Joe?
I've got a couple of questions. One, you talked about this deviation in parking, which you're gonna allow more, generally speaking. On the other hand, you're talking about, well, we're gonna monitor it and make sure nobody's parking on Pelton. Is there a concern? You're gonna make it bigger and then you're gonna worry about Pelton? That's a hypothetical question, but you have to recognize, I think, I'm going to anyways, that this is built in a residential neighborhood, so to speak. I know it's special land use and all that stuff, but the fact remains it's in a residential neighborhood. So with the expanded hours of the one business, not overlapping and all that stuff, understood, the business that's gonna remain open is a bar. It could be called a restaurant bar, but it's a bar. And that bar is going to attract a different crowd than is in Mel's Diner till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Neither good nor bad, just a fact. Has anybody looked at that crowd with respect to A, parking, possibly, and my concern would be the entrance and exits from that parking lot on Pelton, which is gonna drive people that those neighbors have never experienced through their neighborhood to get to Maybe Road. And can we force them, because that would be a bad thing, just, I don't live there, I mean, in that area, but I've had enough problems with parking and other situations, whatnot. Can we force, either close down that exit going to Pelton Road, or make it, like, for instance, a no left turn, so you're forced to go down to Sasha and stay on main roads, and not use cut-throughs through subdivisions to get to Maybe. Because these people are gonna, if that happens, they're gonna be experiencing this at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, not 3 in the afternoon. Just a thought. I don't know who's thinking about that.
It was in my previous review.
And
I expressed it as a concern to the planning commission.
still a concern, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And,
Without
but
a-
let me just comment, Mr. Super, about the one issue is, I think modification of the driveway is definitely something that could be done. Closing it off would be something we would have to get advice from the fire department, because this is a use with one way in and one way out off of Sashabaw. And if you do go back through the old minutes, you'll see that that was a concern of the planning commissions in 1998, 1997. And that was a very clear concern of theirs.
Okay, I just add up, or in conclusion, I'm not necessarily in favor of closing down or removing an exit from that parking lot anyplace, on Pelton, Sashabaw, anyplace. But I do have a concern about exiting that parking lot on Pelton and turning left, and instead of going to Sashabaw, get into the neighborhoods. That, if that happens, my guess is, and I think I talked to Mr. Ottman about this before, I might be wrong about this. If that becomes an issue, that's not gonna be a township issue to resolve. It's gonna be, what, a police issue, I think you said?
In terms of,
Traffic, turning in the left, down through neighborhoods and making noise and stuff like that. We'll
ultimately,
lose
it's
total control of
police
that.
issue.
We won't be able to do a thing about it.
Well, if you establish a condition of a site plan, it will become a township issue.
Well, depends what the condition is.
It
I don't
depends
even
on
know
what the condition is.
condition could
Otherwise,
be.
it's going to be a matter that the police will have to deal with. But it's a public street.
Yeah.
It's a public, I mean, there's
no, I
nothing
understand it.
preventing anybody,
I live in a
including the people that
cut-through
live there, from
subdivision.
parking on that
I know what a public
street.
street is, and it's a pain.
Yeah.
Just to pick up on parking, I've got a lot of questions on the computations. I think there's some things that need to be cleared up, which we can get into later, but, and I'd like to see that drive going out to Pelton angled towards Sashabaw, so that it clearly directs people for a right turn, along with the suggested no left turn sign. Parking seems to be a major issue here, both, does it have enough parking, and will it end up with parking on Pelton? Seems to me it would be possible for us to require call it a parking study that would analyze the operations and basically come up with a conclusion of how many parking places, including employees, patrons, and also maybe even do a little analysis as to the additional traffic it might create on Pelton. We could require that, couldn't we?
Actually, the ordinance does permit you to do that.
Okay. Anybody else?
Okay, I'll still be here.
Yes, the,
Yeah, good.
no,
Oh,
the
I have one more
township
question,
engineer.
Oh.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just one more question. Just kidding. I did, well, anybody, well, not for you. I didn't see, and I could have easily missed it, any reference to staff parking being accommodated and counted in the space requirements. Did I miss?
That's part of that's part of our ordinance parking calculations, so to
So
the
what is-
extent that,
So was that accommodated in these?
as our ordinance requirements are written for their use, for the number of seats they have to meet the parking requirements, but not for both uses. So they don't meet, for the entire site, they don't meet the parking requirements.
As if they're operating sequentially and not,
Correct.
or concurrently, not sequentially.
Correct.
But there's staffing required for the number of seats that are in
Yeah. Well, and again, we,
mills or something, and so, I just looked at the calculations, I just didn't see the, number of seats times two, da-da-da, da-da-da, but I didn't see an add 10 for, at the end, for
Yeah.
staff. So,
let me just give you a little history. It was actually, I believe it was I think it was the Outback, which caused the Township Planning Commission at the time to revisit our parking calculation standards. And we did update those, and for the most part, they've worked pretty well for, just restaurant sites. I will tell you that I know recent experience with more popular restaurants like Art and Jake's, our parking calculations, our parking provisions for sit-down restaurants, for any kind of restaurant, probably need to be updated. And I think that's a recent experience,
Increased?
probably.
so that's a consideration right now, right here.
Well, you can't hold them to something we haven't done
No,
yet.
I know, but I mean,
I mean,
something to
but the
be
point of it
thinking
is,
about.
because they're asking for a deviation from parking, that's certainly a consideration in your decision, if you don't believe there's sufficient parking. Because again, our ordinance does require that they provide parking for all uses on the site, and up until this proposal, they did, when it was more of a service-related use. Okay?
Yeah. All right, engineer, you have?
I don't think he answered the question at all. Yeah, so the answer is no.
Well, good evening. I'll start off by introducing myself first. My name is Jason Longhurst. I'm with Nowak and Frous, and we're the consulting civil engineer for the township. So nice to meet everyone tonight. Maybe I'll just jump right into the drive approach, since that was the last topic of conversations. But if there is a recommendation for some sort of geometric revision to that, I think we would recommend that there be an island created in the center of the approach that forces the right-hand turn as you exit. Pelton Road would be under the jurisdiction of the Road Commission of Oakland County, so anything that's proposed out there would be subject to their review and approval, but I think a recommendation from the township asking for that would carry some weight. But the applicant would have to work through that process with the Road Commission.
Could we also ask them to consider reducing the speed to 25 at the same time?
You can ask anything, right? But with that, I'll jump into my report. Typically, we have a lot of kind of administrative items in the report, and then a few, actual review comments. So I won't go through everything, but for this plan, we really focused in on the final site plan aspect of it. There's obviously not a lot of site improvements proposed, so we kind of focused in on the handicap accessibility portion. For the new restaurant, they're proposing some columns that extend out into the sidewalk on the north side of the building. So we're asking for some additional dimensions and data to confirm that the pedestrian walkway is going to be wide enough and the slopes are going to meet ADA standards for that route there. And then in addition, in the parking lot, they're adding some handicap parking. So we'd like to get some grades and some dimensions to confirm that the slopes in those areas are all in compliance with ADA standards. Lastly, we just focused in on the sanitary lead and the sanitary sewer connection for the property. Again, with us adding a restaurant to a use that was not previously a restaurant, we want to make sure that there's going to be a grease trap incorporated into that. And that'll be something that we work forward on the construction plans as it moves through the process. But other than that, that was really the highlights. We feel it's all things that the applicant can overcome, but just wanted to point them out as part of this review.
Question for you, your item number 6 references a non-conforming parking lot. What about the current parking is
I believe there
non-conforming?
were some dimensional standards of the parking lot that don't meet the current ordinance, but may have been in compliance at the time the parking lot was constructed.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Longhurst? Linda?
Just one, the dumpster is currently servicing just one restaurant. Will the schedule be doubled for it to service two?
I would defer to the applicant to respond to that one, but definitely would be recommended.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. With that, I'll open the public hearing and ask for comments from our people in the audience. And then we'll go to the video portion. Anybody? Yes,
Just
sir.
note that it's 6:40 that you're opening. the
6:40,
public
yes, thank you. Please state, anybody coming up, please state name and address, please.
Robert Vaughn, 4560 Oak Vista, in Independence Township. My property, my family is the immediate adjacent neighbor to the applicant. Our property is contiguous. We share the property line. We share the fence line on the west side of their property. And I come to make an addendum to the letter that we sent to the Planning Commission sometime last week, I believe. I believe many of the issues that were discussed there and here have already been covered, but
You got the original one?
the Planning Commission is concerned with the impact on the surrounding neighborhoods, so I'm hoping to maybe illuminate that. So there's a mention of 73 parking spaces, so every night we could expect somewhere between 0 and 73 cars in the parking lot, with turnover at the restaurant at 0 to 100 and something. So that means the increased noise of traffic in the parking lot, people getting in and out of their cars, talking as they go in and out of the restaurant. And the owners, Mr. O'Hearn and Mr. Habermas, have proposed measures to reduce the noise. They have proposed to replace our shared fence at their expense. We have agreed on a fence design, and they've mentioned the planting the arborvitae on their side. I believe these measures do well to reduce static noise, such as traffic, a noise that slowly changes. But we are also concerned with dynamic noise, noise that changes rapidly, noise that comes over the wall, such as car doors. Our neighbors immediately behind us, I believe I saw them on the conference call, so I'll let them speak to themselves, but they do have a second floor bedroom. Noise coming over the wall is concerned. The proposed closing time of the new business is 12 p.m., and that means we may expect, based on the nature of the business, to hear car doors, conversations, laughter, occasional yelling and arguing, and foul language from our neighbors at 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, while our children are in bed sleeping. Now, the owners, to their credit, propose to be vigilant in patrolling the parking lot to keep the peace, and they propose to post signs asking patrons to respect the neighborhood. Signs work when people are already honest and respectful. And signs and rules matter when they are enforced. Now no one wants to patrol the parking lot acting like a movie theater usher and shushing people at all hours of the night. Well, not all hours, to be fair. But from about 9 to 1 when we expect people to be quiet. Enforcement, regardless of the intention of the owners, is an unreasonable expectation. People are people. My wife is especially concerned about our quality of life. What does it look like in the summertime when our windows are open at night and our children are in bed and restaurant customers are coming and going, closing car doors, speaking, laughing, arguing, using foul language? That noise comes over the wall. To further illustrate the point that people are people, we have there's kitty corner to, or right behind Mel's Grill there, again, next to our property, there's the gas station, which also includes a liquor store. And there are, repeated episodes. Every year I pull out somewhere half a dozen to a dozen liquor bottles out of my front yard, various pieces of trash and containers, because people are people coming from the liquor store. Now, it is obvious that the applicants, they want to be good neighbors. They're interested in running a good, successful business. And we have zero animosity toward them. And I believe that a man ought to do what he will with his own property. I don't know that the zoning commission the planning commission by its nature operates on that principle. But you desire to know the potential effects, and I hope that I've presented some of those effects, hopefully factually. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do I need to read this into the record?
She has to talk to Brian, make sure it's part of the packet.
I didn't see it. This letter from Mr. Vaughn, was it part of our packet?
It was a separate email to all the commissioners, and I have a copy if you'd like to see it right now, or.
Mr.
read it
Ritchie
into the
shared
record.
his.
I just want to make sure they all saw it, and it's in the, part of the record, so.
Mhm.
I did not see it.
Anybody else from the audience?
Hello. My name's Deborah Ebright. I live at 4905 Sashaba. And I attended the November 30th hearing as well. And I just have a couple of follow-up questions to that. Both at that meeting and this meeting, they have stated that they have contacted the neighbors. I have still never been contacted by anybody. Not by mail, phone, nobody's showing up at my door. I have cameras around my house. Nobody has been there when I wasn't home. So, and I was never advised that there was a point where I could meet with them to discuss anything or have questions answered. All of that aside, I have some questions about the hours of operation. Presumably they're closing at midnight. Does that mean people come in at 11:59 and are being seated and then are there for 2 hours more? Or does that mean the door closes at midnight and everybody's out? I mean, there's a big difference. I don't know who would enforce that, you know, I don't know. I mean, many times you go to a restaurant and they'll let you in, they'll seat you, even though they're closed. And I don't know how it works with you placing conditions on their business operations. I'm not familiar with that, sorry. I know in the state of Michigan, though, bars in general can stay open till 2 a.m., can serve liquor till then, and their patrons don't have to be out until 2:30. Okay? People who work there can stay beyond that time. So I don't know. I mean, years ago when I was in college, I worked at a bar. We would stay after, everybody left. We hung out, we played cards, we were there till, 3, 4 in the morning. Now, I don't expect that to be a problem. I don't think it would be loud or anything, but I'd just like more clarification on what does closing time really mean? And while you've mentioned concerns about parking on Pelton, it's not just Pelton. Oak Vista, the State Farm across the street. I mean, if people want to go there and there's not a place to park, they're going to park wherever they can. So you can put all the signs up you want on Pelton. They're going to go then park in State Farm parking lot. They're going to go park down Oak Vista and walk across the street or walk down the sidewalk. So I don't think just Pelton is the parking concern or the neighborhoods going towards maybe. I think it's all those neighborhoods. And I wasn't clear in the first meeting if there was outdoor seating. I don't know if anybody can clarify that for me. There's no outdoor seating?
Nose Grill does, but no, I asked that question early on. They had no intention, they said they had no intention of using that outdoor seating.
Okay, but that outdoor seating is out there.
It is, but it's.
So if somebody leaves, they could go sit there. So again, you have an enforcement issue. And while I'm sure that it is their intention to enforce it, and they do have good intentions, my concern is wanting to enforce it and actually doing it are two different things. And I agree with the gentleman over there. I mean, I pick up liquor bottles every day. Every single day from the gas station. The noise from the gas station, they have a radio that plays. It plays, and you don't think it travels, but it certainly does. If I sit in my backyard, I hear the radio from the gas station. If I have my windows open at night, I hear it. So, while they propose to put a wall up, the noise is still going to travel, in my opinion. And that's just based on the other businesses around there. And those were just my concerns my main one was the closing time. What does that mean? And that's all.
Thank you. I anticipate we'll keep going with the public hearing, then when it's over, I'll ask the applicant to address closing time.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
I am Cindy O'Hearn. My address is 11779 Big Lake Road in Davisburg. I'm one of the owners of Mel's Grill. We reopened Mel's Grill, I think it was 2009. I was on site at Mel's Grill till COVID hit. And from that point on, I haven't been in there as much. So I was there for 11 years. And in that whole time frame that I was there, we never, ever had anybody park on the street, ever. And at that point in time, there were 2 other businesses next to us. There was a massage place, there was a hair salon. So, and I understand the concern about people parking, on the streets, but we're not gonna let that happen. And I think, especially now that Mel's was able to expand because of COVID, we still don't have any issues. We had a fundraiser for Pine Knob. I said this at the last meeting, and it was packed. I can't even tell you, it was packed. It was standing room only. We had about 4 or 5 tables waiting. There was still parking places out there. The structure of this new place is not going to overcome that aspect because, I know them. They're not gonna do that. So I understand people's concerns on parking, but that is definitely not gonna be an issue. It's just not. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? How about online?
Maybe just ask a couple times.
Anybody online would like to say anything? One last chance for the audience. Close the public hearing at 7:53.
6:53?
Yes, sorry.
No problem.
There you go.
All right. Closing time. Could you address closing time, please?
Sure.
Okay. How you doing? My name is James O'Hearn, and I own Buckshot's Bar and Grill. I'm with Triad Investments, and I'm one of the petitioners for this to open. There's some new faces up here. Congratulations on your position. A couple things just to address everything that's been going on. At Buckshot's, we've had 0 infractions of serving this community for over 13 years. We take it very seriously. That's just not something we take lightly, and that doesn't happen by accident. So for your concern about closing down and all that stuff, we're not going to be keeping people there later and all that kind of stuff. It's just not how we operate. At Buckshot's, I can stay open till 2 o'clock in the morning. I choose not to. So I just wanted to get that out there. Also, I'd like to provide you my phone number after this meeting because I didn't have your contact information, but we have reached out to everybody probably else, so I apologize about that. As far as the parking goes, if you accept the fact that Mel's will not open at the same time as this place and we'll have staggered hours by an hour, there'll be an hour for Mel's staff to get out before this place even opens up. Then we do fall within the guidelines for the ordinance. Mel's is the same size as this place, basically. Mel's does not have an issue. With it being staggered hours, we are not going to have an issue. Trying to think what else, where we...
Well, and the parking requirements in the ordinance contemplated the employees as well. I mean, that's why there is no specific line item for employees. When the calculation was made, X number of spaces for X number of seats, it included the number of employees that would be required in a restaurant to serve, those number of patrons.
And we believe for over 25 years, Mel's Grill has set the example of why it does work in that kind of a setting. Mel's Grill has been the only business to sustain business that entire time. The other unit that we're proposing to combine has been vacant since COVID, over 3 years. Before that, it had been vacant for many years also. There's no use case for that anymore in Clarkson, that kind of a thing. With Mel's, the legal minutes do not specify hours. They do not specify alcohol. It was all approved, and what's written is written. And so we feel, and because Joe gets a lot of requests to stay open with Mel's and get a liquor license and that kind of stuff, and we felt that this was the perfect solution to that, instead of him just staying open and getting a liquor license, because we wanted to bring something that Clarkson would be very proud of to this neighborhood. And, you know, like I said, just the 25 years, that doesn't happen by accident. We give back to the communities. We're all about this community. Born and raised here, Clarkson graduates, all of us are alumni. We care a lot, and I just want to throw that out there. Is there any other questions I can answer?
I have a question regarding business hours. The Mel's Girls owners have indicated that in the past they have fundraisers at night, and we thank them for that and don't want to discourage them. But it seemed like that would aggravate the parking problem if, so are they willing to either move those to Fireside or have them during normal business hours? Or their normal business
I can
hours?
answer that. I'm Joe O'Hearn. Hi, everybody. We have already discussed that, and we have options available to us with that. We can move, we have another location, obviously, so we can move all our fundraisers to our other location. But if that doesn't work for the people, because it's local people there that want to go right next to them to eat at night, we could set up a, you know, come in between this time and this time on this day, and we'll donate a percentage of the sales for that day during our normal business hours. Because we definitely don't want to stop the fundraisers. We don't want to not do what made us who we are, but we have to just get creative, and we can do that. We can fix those problems.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commission members? Questions?
One last thing, on the lighting, we will certainly, I mean, you can certainly make a condition of special land use approval that we provide lighting that meets the ordinance requirements. The dumpster, yes, we will expand the dumpster as was suggested earlier, and that can certainly be a condition of approval.
Absolutely, and there is currently, so Mel's has been operating with zero, we have not gotten any complaints about lights, traffic, any of that kind of stuff while it's been operating. The gentleman who lives directly across from the Pelton egress, his name is Ben. He was here on the other meeting. He's in support of the project. He hopes this goes through, and he's not worried about a headlight hitting his house or anything like that. There is a 3-foot existing berm that's been there since, you know, the development was originally done. I understand that the ordinance now may be 4 feet. It's a green belt area. We would be happy with putting a hedge, like bushes, a row like that on that side. With us doing the most expensive fence we basically could do for the sound, and adding taller arborvitaes to try and give them more privacy and more sound breakup. Somebody else mentioned that. That was the whole design behind that. And with us spending that kind of money, a masonry wall along that side, I believe it was the south side, was it?
West.
North side? Okay, I'm sorry, the north side. We feel that bushes could accomplish the same thing, and with the parking the way it is there, sometimes we have elderly customers. We feel they might back up into a wall or something like that, and that is the green belt. So we would gladly put some greenery there and that kind of stuff. But with what we are trying to do with this project and what we're, it just gets to a point where it's not financially feasible to continue to add things to the site plan and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of what I wanted to say about that.
And any other questions, we're certainly be happy to address them.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yeah, I guess one of the things you didn't address that came up was the exit onto Pelton. Whether we, Mr. Longhurst suggests maybe some kind of island there. I was saying, we've called them like dog bones, where it kind of like forces you to turn to the right. I don't know if you're.
We feel that really wouldn't be necessary personally, because of how the businesses have operated in there for, 2.5 decades. We would need to discuss that honestly internally, if that would be an option for us to be able to do that, because with the hours, being open at 4 o'clock, we have to be able to do enough business to make it viable and give talented people enough hours to make this a viable project. So, does that answer your question? Okay.
So with Mel's Grill, I pull a lot of business out of those neighborhoods. That's who I feed every week, every day. It's those neighborhoods. It's all the people around us. Same people every day, and we love it. I would be reluctant to make it less inviting to pull into my restaurant. For them to have to kind of go around to the Sashball side, I don't, you know, I just worry that is operationally going to be a challenge for us to do something like that. As it is now, I mean, we just don't have the issue now, and I understand that this is a separate situation, but because it's not only an exit, it's an entrance, and that's where my concern lies. It's not just that we're forcing people out a certain way, we're not letting people come in a certain way, so, yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
Somebody made a comment. So Mel's Grill could technically stay open from 7 in the morning till midnight as it is?
As far as I'm aware, ma'am, yes. This project was born out of that idea, honestly. I've been hearing for years, every week, and since we put the patio on even more, is stay open at night, and then secondly, get a liquor license. Well, Mel's is what it is, and we love Mel's for what it is. My employees love it the way it is, but there's a demand for a restaurant to be open in this location at night. And so we thought that the best solution to this was we'd bring something new and exciting that the township doesn't have really, a new idea, and we could just, you use what Mel's does, but just use it over here, because Mel's is a very similar size restaurant. I think it's only 10 seats different. And if you just look at the picture, you can see it's basically the same size. So I just have so much experience with how this works, and I know my mother Cindy talked about the fundraiser, and I stood in the parking lot for that fundraiser because I wanted to see it was the most. We had 20 staff members, we had 10 teachers show up just to volunteer. We had so many people there, and I stood in that parking lot and I watched the whole night when I should have been doing a better job inside the restaurant. I was standing in that parking lot and I saw not one car tried to park on the street. And if we have to stand out there, we have to hire someone to be in that parking lot to police it, that's what we'll do. Because at the end of the day, this community supports us. And that's why we're here. That's why we're in front of you tonight, is because the community supported us enough for us to be here right now.
One more question.
Yes, ma'am.
How long has Mel's been at that location?
25 years. Yeah, I've owned it for 15. I've owned the other location for 17. I've been there for 23.
A couple of questions for Mr. Carlisle, or for both of you. The existing wood fence, so there was talk of asking the applicant to replace that. Is there going to be two fences, the Semtech and then the wood right behind it, or what?
No, they have to be replaced. We were gonna remove that fence, the old fence that's there, and basically upgrade it.
So upgrade it to the Semtech, or?
Yes,
So,
yes.
okay, I found that confusing. I didn't know if you were talking about two different fences.
So the fence that's there, that's existing, it can't be doing much, to be honest.
Agreed.
So,
Yeah.
so ripping the whole thing out, replacing it with something more aesthetically pleasing and more effective is what we were gonna do.
Okay. And Mr. Carlisle, is the Semtech decorative on both sides?
From the illustrations on the website and from the illustrations they gave us, yes, it is.
You agree with that?
I can confirm that, but yeah, from investigating what their website literature shows, of course, they have all different varieties, it is.
Mr. Carlisle, how far back would you like this Semtech? Maybe on the site plan, I don't know, can you demonstrate where you would like it cut off?
It cannot, a 6-foot fence cannot extend into the front yard setback at this location right here. I think one of two solutions, either, turn it or reduce it in size. But I'm very concerned about sight distance at that entrance with it shown as it is.
Agreed, yeah.
And I want to just illustrate to the commission, this was my other concern, was this whole end being open. And, I mean, this bit of fencing right here is not really doing much. If this were turned and screening that, then you'd have the site enclosed. I still have, my recommendation stands about doing something here, but a hedgerow is simply gonna, I'd have to be convinced that they could do a solid hedgerow or enlarge that berm.
That's where you're proposing or suggesting the knee wall
Correct.
on the top of that berm.
Yeah, correct, do that, because you do, I mean, you're still gonna have a lot of activity going in and out here.
How would that interact with the trees that are there? They're lovely trees.
Well, that's why I was suggesting a wall, because you could install a wall under, along that curb line and not affect those trees. And I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same kind of wall as the Syntec wall, but it should be some kind of solid screen there. That was my suggestion.
Doesn't the Simtech fence go all the way to the back of the property?
Well, it's a little vague, but yeah, I think that's what they're showing, is that,
Because there's some really big trees back there too, but I would think it would go the whole way, the property line.
But from here, it really, I mean, if they were to turn it, it would still have the same effect on this piece of property. Because it'd actually be more effective, because now you wouldn't have any activity or sound. And it would also discourage people from parking, on Oak Vista. It is Oak Vista, right? Yeah, Oak Vista, because they couldn't get into the parking lot.
If they didn't turn it and they continued it, would it not benefit the people behind the WOW gas station as well? It would impact the sound coming to the neighbors currently from that gas station, right? You think? Or no?
If they took it across the south side?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, I don't know, I'd have to look at that a little further.
I don't think they can turn it without having to take out trees, because I drove over there today and those are huge trees back
No,
there,
I
if I'm
fully
correct.
acknowledge it, but guess it's up to the commission, what's the objective here, what do you wanna do? Save the trees, protect the
Well,
neighbors?
I think it would be up to the neighbors too, Mr. and Ms. Vaughn. Wouldn't you rather it go to the property line?
Well, it's really up to the planning commission to enforce
Well,
ordinance requirements.
I get that, but I'm just saying, rather than turn it, seems like they'd want it on the property line, the way it is on the plan.
On the south side right there, we actually have a drainage area right there.
I saw
And it's
that.
fenced also, and there's a bunch of very big mature pines right there.
I saw
If we were to put a fence there, it might block access to any future maintenance to that drainage or anything like that. There really is no gap, and what we could do is, because there's existing fences, we could put those slats in the existing fence, so it just kind of blocks light. We'd be willing to do that, but if we do put a fence on that south side, those big pine trees will die.
Do you understand, I was talking about along the parking lot, along the curb line, not in where the trees are. There probably would be one tree that would have to be removed, if your plan is accurate.
Are you talking the knee wall or the
No,
back?
right there, I mean, just a
The
tree,
big
a
one.
6-foot wall, yes.
Put it at the edge of the parking lot versus
Right here, Mr. Carlisle, right?
Correct.
on the edge of the parking lot.
One more question.
Yeah.
The wooden fence that's there right now, it goes to the back of the property, right?
It proceeds, I believe, as close to the road as it can.
To Oakhurst, or
Oakhurst.
Oakhurst, yeah.
There's a fire hydrant and a drainage ditch right there.
Okay.
So where, as I've seen this plan, as I understand it, that vertical line there north to south, that's exactly where the existing fence is.
Okay.
Other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Got a sort of like a technical question, not so much for the owners, but maybe for Brian, I don't know. I mean, just from the conversations, it seems like, you know, the petitioners are bending over, you know, backwards to accommodate the conditions that the neighbors have identified and also probably brought up in November before we were here. That's good, okay. If there was site plan approval granted tonight with all the variances that were required, do they run with this site forever, or if these gentlemen would sell their land, do we start all over again?
Zoning runs with the land.
Zoning
And that's
runs-
why I
okay,
wanted to
so
caution, again.
all the good things that they're doing could go up in smoke if they sold it to somebody else and they just ignored everything that we said tonight. Technically, yes, you know,
Zoning
yes.
regulations are intended to be,
enforced.
well, they're intended to be on, you know, with the property.
Right, right.
And stay with the property.
Right, I'm just thinking about the protections going in the future, because that's all.
See, that's why I have questions about this supposed so-called agreement. I don't like, and I pulled out of the November application, the agreement that they proposed. I don't like it, I gotta get my hands on it, it's in here somewhere. Here it is. It references Mel's Grill. Well, as you so promptly pointed out, we can't rely on who the applicant is. You know, we thought we were getting the Nino Salvaggio's, and guess what, we're getting the Myers. So it might not be Mel's Grill, so I think that needs to be reworded. It references open to the public, private fundraising parties, I think. The hours need, it references when they'll be open, it doesn't reference when they'll close. And, again, the agreement shall remain in effect so long as Mel's Grill and Fireside Kitchen operations are ongoing on the subject property. That's gotta be reworded. It's gotta be worded in some way as long as there's any restaurants operating in those two locations. And then, Mr. Carlisle, based on what you said, I have some experience with real estate, and I have concern about how a future buyer of this property becomes aware of these restrictions. And I know that recording at the Register of Deeds is deemed a method of public notice. So I have questions on how we accomplish that.
Whatever conditions that you establish, which could include any, even, first of all, keep in mind, we don't enforce private agreements. But if it's a condition of your approval, even if it references the conditions that are put forth in that agreement, it is then enforceable. That's the first part. Second of all, we have had private restrictions required to be recorded in the past. So, for example, I mean, our PUD, all our PUD requirements are recorded. So you are absolutely correct. That is notice to any future property owners, but actually to future township officials too.
Yeah.
That there are conditions that are tied to the property.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Can I just briefly respond to, and your comments are well-founded. We will revise the agreement to address your concerns. I understand what they are. The intent would be that that agreement stays in place so long as there are restaurants on that site, whether it's Mel's Grill, Fireside Kitchen, or some other name. As far as enforcing private agreements, that's true, but I was referring to your planning consultant's recommendation that we have a development agreement which the property owners would sign with the township that you could enforce, that would incorporate all these conditions that could be placed on the property.
Right.
So not a private agreement.
No, a development
Private
agreement.
agreement.
That's, yeah, it would be a development agreement. And we would, and it could also include all the restrictions that you just noted, the deficiencies in that current shared parking agreement.
Okay. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
You did ask the question what the parking deviation would be, and the calculation according to their plan, which I think is accurate from that standpoint now, the deviation is 42 spaces.
Okay, in that regards, our ordinance requires that the parking be computed based upon maximum allowed under construction code. Is the 83, is that construction code?
Well, the 83, I'm talking about the two uses combined by the zoning ordinance. There were parking requirements by the zoning ordinance, and I reviewed their calculations are correct, and the ordinance would require 115 spaces, and they've got 73, so the deficiency would be 42. So that's the deviation that you would be asked to be granted.
Okay, but for clarification, you said their calculations are correct. Has anybody verified that 83 is the correct number versus
I
per
did.
construction code?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not the construction code, it's the zoning ordinance.
Well, but I think our ordinance does say it has to be based on construction code.
No, it's based on seats.
Well, then the maximum allowable seats as allowed for construction codes.
No, it's actually what they provided on their floor plan. That's why we require a floor plan.
So then,
We
would
can't,
also
we cannot,
require
we can
floor
only
plan?
rely on exactly
amount
what
of
they
seats.
show. Because you pointed out exactly correctly that construction code or fire code may like higher occupancy. But if they say they're gonna only put in this many seats, that's all they can do.
Okay.
That's why we require a floor plan.
What do we do about, how does parking calculations come into play when you have the outdoor seating?
That was actually part of the calculation for Mel's Diner. They don't, they're not, and I think part of the conditions would be that they don't use the outdoor seating. But that was part of the calculations for Mel's Diner.
Okay.
And normally, when we, I'll tell you, like Chris Belli's recently, this was, Ron remembers that, they wanted to put in an outdoor seating, and we required that to be part of their calculations, and they couldn't meet it.
One space for each 2 seats plus 1 space for every 10 seats based on maximum seating capacity as determined by state construction code adopted by the township.
But that's why we require a floor plan,
Okay?
so that you condition it upon what they submit. So if they max this out by construction code, then that's what it would have to be. But that's not what they're doing, because I know that by construction code, they could probably put more seats in there.
Well, that's where I have a problem. Because as we said, we can't rely that they're gonna be the owners of this place forever.
That's why you condition it.
Maximum seating.
Our
Correct.
building official is gonna go on the approved site plan of the maximum number of seats. Maybe
Okay.
they can't get that many seats in. Chris Belli's had that problem.
Yeah.
So they maxed it out, and they came in for actual permits. They couldn't fit as many seats as they had proposed to the planning commission.
Okay.
And it's and if you can't meet the parking requirements and put more seats in, then you're in violation of your site plan.
So that's what restricts you, even if you could put 30 more spots in,
Correct.
you can't because,
It's capped.
There's always a difference between what the construction and the fire codes say versus what the zoning ordinance says. There's always these conflicts. But the zoning ordinance is what dictates, because it's the more restrictive standard. And that's why we require a floor plan, and that's why we require them to calculate parking based on what they say they're going to do. We consistently do that with restaurants.
Okay. Yes.
So, just as a comment, doesn't the number of seats also trigger other issues like water and sewer, REUs, and those types of things as well? And that's another reason why we go by the number of seats, per the site. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, those number of seats trigger other issues too, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and as a matter, if I remember correctly, Art and Jake's, when they first proposed, had more seats. And they had to reduce the number of seats because they didn't have enough parking.
Yes, sir.
Just to be clear, Fireside Grill will not use the Mills Grill outdoor seating, and that can certainly be a condition of approval. That's not their intention.
Correct. And somebody else commented, there's no way to get to Mel's Grill patio. It's completely enclosed. So unless somebody's like hopping the wall, they're not gonna be using that.
Anybody else have a question, comment?
One more last question. What would prevent people from loitering after the close of business?
Our experienced management team, the three of us right here.
Yeah, I've been running buckshots for 8 years now. We don't have a problem with that at all. And I enforce it, and I intend to do the same thing with this location.
Is there an ordinance that would define loitering if they were to leave?
Really becomes a police issue.
Okay.
I mean, if there's a disturbance, then maybe we'd have to call the police.
Yeah,
Because
that's all how it
we're not
works.
enforcing, Ryan's staff doesn't enforce after hours.
Thank you.
So what's the pleasure of the commission we added a lot of things here tonight. We talked about the knee wall, we've talked about extending the fence around the corner of the parking lot. We've talked about enlarging the dumpster, angling the entrance. Help me out here, guys, if I missed anything. The lighting.
Lighting plan.
Hours of operation.
Yeah,
There's a
I
need-
mean, is there an inclination? Which of those ideas do you think have merit and should be attached? Are you willing to grant an approval tonight based on a lot of conditions, or would you like to see a revised site plan? Incorporating those things, would you like to see the parking study that we talked about? Or are there those amongst us that just don't feel this has met the conditions of special land use?
I'm just waiting for some of the other people to speak first.
Yeah.
I'll go first if, nobody else wants to, but I guess, I think this is, this has the capability of being a great addition to the township. It also obviously is very tight, there's, we got a business here that butts against the residential area, so I guess I want to make sure we take concerns and take care of the residents. I've listened to their concerns, and I've seen the petitioner also show that he's tried to address those concerns. And I think in any new venture, there's always something you could worry about. And I guess in my mind, we just need to make sure we take as many steps as we can to assure that we're protecting the residents around this facility as well. So I guess I think with a number of conditions, talking about the wall and all the different things that we just mentioned, I could be in favor of us supporting this development. So.
Joe?
I support all the comments that Mr. Ritchie has made. But I'm more, my question is more about the process of, we can't just, we could, but, I wouldn't be in favor of just flat approving the site plan tonight without the conditions being a part of that site plan approval, but I don't even know what all those conditions are because I forgot half of them in the last 30 minutes. So I'm trying to think of a way, process-wise, where we could get this list of conditions to make sure that we include them in any site plan approval. Let me ask this, Mr., do you understand what I'm talking about, Ron?
I guess from my past experience, since I've been on the board a few years now, is that we just basically start speaking to those conditions, and everybody tries to chime in and like say if if they don't feel the first person that's making the motion included everything, we could say, hey, can we add this or can we add that? And hopefully we get it to the point where we have all the conditions satisfied to everybody.
To jump in on that, I may make a motion with 5 things, and somebody say, well, I'll second it if we include these 2 things that you missed, and I would say that's fine, or I object to that one, and so it's a process.
Right. I understand the process of how you would go about doing it. I'm just worried that we, concerned that we don't miss the condition that we really felt was important. I guess that's just, if we miss it, we miss it.
Well,
That's terrible.
I think that's why you make a motion and we try to talk it out, and that's why everybody gives their input as best you can. And
I was thinking of the easier way, have the secretary give us a list from the minutes of what it is, so we don't miss anything, but I guess that's not what you're saying.
I know, I took a few notes, Brian's taking notes, everybody I've
I
seen
have some notes.
take some notes, so I mean, that's really what you do, is you go,
Okay.
kind of a collaborative process, so. Unless you want to do it some way different, that's.
Well,
I'm just-
is it possible to push it to the next meeting and have a cleaner,
Absolutely, it's possible.
okay?
I am sympathetic to the applicant and their desire to move forward. And I also don't like deferring something to another meeting if we're gonna turn it down eventually, adding additional conditions. So that's, trying to get a flavor here tonight, and so at least we could maybe give them some encouragement.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
you would be also placing the responsibility to ensure the conditions that you are anticipating to be included on Brian and I and Jason.
and that was my next
And I
question.
don't, we've had that issue before, and I've always tried to caution the commission, look, it's really, it's your responsibility to understand what the conditions are, and it's our responsibility to meet with the applicant and come back to you with what we believe to be your intention. You've raised a number of things here, and I'm not even exactly sure how you want them addressed. I've raised a number of issues here. I don't know if they're going to be willing to address them. They've expressed some concerns about a couple of my recommendations. It's not correct. It's not a correct procedure to put it on us to enforce what your will is. So it's up to you.
I was gonna ask you if you two were okay handling all these conditions at engineering, and I'm getting the answer. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
No, I am not.
Okay.
And I'm not, not at all adverse to, to meeting with the applicant and working some details out, but we have to know what you want.
Understood.
Yeah.
Anybody, any else reaction to that?
Just a second comment, there's been a couple of letters since the first meeting, still with some residents that are expressing concern that they're, maybe that they weren't approached, or their concerns weren't still addressed. So I feel it's necessary as immediate neighbors to the property, we should consider this
Okay,
in our decision, right?
okay. For the applicant's benefit as well as our benefit, and Mr. Carlisle and Mr. Ottman's, and if somebody wants to make a list of these, I'm gonna run down what I think are the additional things that we've talked about that need to be addressed.
These would be part of the conditions, you're saying.
Well, not tonight, but
Well,
But, so that
that's
they
you're
know
saying.
what they have to do for the next meeting. It sounds like we're probably gonna table it for another meeting.
But I'm just saying, you're gonna present what you feel our position is on these conditions.
And what they need to address.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so somebody take some notes.
Brian's ready to write.
Extending the west wall around the parking lot. And this is my wording. I think you get the gist of, so let's not word pick. Angle parking and no left turn onto Pelton and Oak View, is that the right word?
Vista.
Oak Vista, thank you. expanding the dumpster, the lighting plan, updating the lighting plan, the knee wall along Pelton, a revised plan for the Simtech wall on the west side of the property, particularly in the setback for Pelton.
Do lighting?
I said, I did say lighting plan.
Okay. How, I guess,
Yeah.
it's your motion, hours of operation?
Uh,
That
Yeah.
don't,
Hours.
they don't overlap?
Yes.
Can we add one more thing? I would like to see the applicant meet with some of the neighbors to get some resolution rather than, I mean, I don't know if there's a way to get resolution, but I would like to see that.
So this project has been delayed on several occasions already. My fear is basically each time it's delayed, we're a small business. We might lose the funding to our bank if it could destroy the whole process that we've been down for a very, very long time here. If it's at all possible, if we could talk it out to get whatever conditions, we will do as much as absolutely possible. As far as the modifications to a parking lot with like a divider and that kind of stuff, we're too small of a business. We just don't have the funding to do that with everything else that we've been trying to do for the neighbors. So delaying this today would be potentially ending the entire project. And I just wanted to at least give you all that information, so.
Thank you.
We also, we met with both Robert over there and the Acres on multiple occasions. I feel like we've had good dialogue with them. We also called the other lady that is Carol Wolf. We really have like already met with all these neighbors before. We will absolutely meet with you. But I feel like we're getting the same answer we got at the last meeting with, do these things come back, revise your site plan. We've done all those things. We feel like if there's other things, then we're happy to do a conditional approval. But that's kind of where the project stands. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman? If we could have approval with a list of conditions, but also make a condition, a development agreement be signed between the township and the applicant that will have whatever detail, subject to the approval of the township attorney or the planning consultant, to make sure that we have the detail that you require. That would be my possibility. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
could I just ask a question? That development agreement, could it contain the conditions that we just listed?
I think that's the intent.
That would be our intention, yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay, okay.
I appreciate your concern over the time. This is a complicated project in my mind. Even though I'm new on the commission, I followed it. I watched the November meeting, I read the reports, and my initial response was very questionable, because it's complicated. But personally, I don't think the township can sacrifice our due diligence to meet your timeline, and I'm sorry. Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman, just that we do have, if the notes from our Carlisle Wortman, if we do choose to approve the final site plan, there are 3 things that were mentioned on here that we have covered, if we were to streamline things a little bit. And that would be the parking requirements, the nature of the screening and fences, which we talked about in the lighting. So those were the big three that were mentioned.
Well, the dumpster's not on there, the
Correct.
angled parking's not, the angled entrance, and again, maybe these are issues, I'm not trying to dictate to the planning commission, maybe these are issues that the majority of us don't think need to be amended.
So, Mr. Chairman, the angled parking entrance poses a challenge to an existing business, not only to the proposed business. So it makes sense, maybe from a neighbor's perspective, but maybe it doesn't make sense for the concept of the business being there. I think the operator had mentioned that it's it would be a challenge to require an additional hoop to jump through for Mel's Grill, which has not, Mel's Grill's not on the chopping block here, not on evaluation, so I feel like it would be, I guess what I'm saying is, I don't know that would be something I would support. I wouldn't want to endanger Mel's Grill regardless of how we decide to proceed with this fireside grill.
Yeah, I understand it makes it a little more difficult for people to access it that are coming from the neighborhood to the west. But I also have concern about the additional traffic it'll create on Pelton with people leaving, so.
Is it not possible to have a sign, no turn left after 5 p.m.,
Yes.
6 p.m.?
So, Mr. Chair, if I could,
I don't know.
it's
Not a
tough
bad
to
idea.
describe in words. I did a little sketch here, but what we would do is create an island. We would still allow traffic to come in the approach, but it would be the exit traffic that this island would direct to the right.
Oh,
If that
I can
clarifies
yeah,
the.
okay.
I take a little dog, I got it.
So,
They would call it a pork
traffic
chop.
would still be able to.
Pork
go
Pork,
down.
pork
There you
chop,
go.
not a dog bone.
Okay, whatever.
Yep, got it.
forgive me if
Pork
I didn't
chop.
understand that.
Okay, does that satisfy your concern?
Mhm.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
who would create the development agreement?
Well,
can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
I had some language written up because that agreement is key to mine, and I can read it, and I'm not making a motion, I'm just, for example. One of the conditions would be a firm document that shall apply to all existing and future occupants and owners of the property acceptable to the township and approved by township legal counsel. The agreement should, at a minimum, cover the following. Should remain in effect so long as any portion of the building in excess of the portion currently used by Mel's Grill is occupied by a restaurant and/or bar lounge. Limiting their hours of usage such that the separate distinct restaurants and restaurant bar lounge shall never be open at the same time, and calling out the opening and closing times of each restaurant and bar lounge operation. Off-street parking will not be allowed. Or on-street, that should be on-street parking. Or off-premises, probably be a better word. The document that the owners of the restaurant shall maintain an internal camera system which will be monitored by staff, along with sending staff members to inspect the parking lot to monitor disorderly conduct and no parking on residential streets. And no outdoor seating. And so with that, I'm not dictating the type of document, I'm dictating, or we're dictating what we want it to cover, and I leave it up to Mr. Carlisle and our legal counsel to come up with the best way to do that.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Joe?
Yeah.
Mr. Carlisle?
Normally, procedurally, what happens is the applicant's attorney will prepare a draft of that document. So we'll review it, along with township attorney. So it'll be that kind of process, but we'd rather have the applicant's attorney spend their time preparing the document, And our role is to review it and make sure that it meets the intent of the planning commission's motion.
Do you have any issue with how I outlined that?
Not at all.
Does the applicant have any issue with that?
I don't know.
The only question I have is when would that be part of the final site plan approval?
Yes.
Okay, so then we would not be doing final site plan approval tonight. We don't have that document.
That can be a document that's covered, as long as we provide, I'm answering this for you, okay? If somebody thinks I'm wrong, please correct me. We are directing, we are approving it subject to, or we would be approving it subject to that document being created, and we're leaving it up to our staff and our legal counsel to create it. So it's, I would anticipate it wouldn't come back to us.
Well, this is not what I heard before. I mean, there are things that are unresolved here that I think the planning commission needs to see and have it come back to you. I mean, the applicant has said there are some limitations. I have some suggestions for them, some alternatives, as I always do, but I haven't had a chance to discuss it with them.
Well, I think Joe was talking about actually seeing the document agreement.
Well, but I also heard you say you're gonna approve the site plan, and my concern is this isn't ready.
I didn't mean to say that.
Okay, yes, the
Okay.
document would be, I believe that you should see that document and you should approve that document,
I do too.
I do.
because that's your conditions of
Okay.
approval.
Okay,
And really, your motion, really, and then what makes it, it facilitates it, because really your motion, you're not gonna have to list all the conditions now, you're just gonna simply reference this development agreement,
Right,
okay?
right.
And-
Because theoretically, everything will all be in there that meets your
okay.
your intent.
Well, and one thing too is, I don't think we're clear on that west wall, because we said turning it around the parking lot, but that would include cutting some trees, so
Well,
whether it should go down all the way or around the parking
let's,
lot.
you know, my suggestion, again, that's another area where we have to investigate that, and there might be some alternatives. I will tell you, if it means losing a tree to protect the residents, I'm going to recommend to you, you lose a tree.
I agree with that, I just think the residents should be
Correct.
Okay.
included in that discussion.
Another reason to wait for it to come back with all the corrections.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much for your patience tonight. We appreciate
No,
it.
you're being patient too, thank you.
I think what I would like to ask, and I think this encompasses the intent of Mr. Carlisle's comments just now, is that you approve the special land use subject to conditions and table the site plan approval until your next meeting, and have the site plan, the special land use approval contingent on an acceptable site plan. It sounds like, I mean, if the use is acceptable and we're working out details on the site plan, then, you know, that would give us some measure of comfort that we can go forward with financing.
Gets back to your comments about. you
And the
wanna-
development agreement
Don't
would
wanna
be part
act
of
like
that.
you're gonna approve it, and then everybody say no, so,
Yeah. I'm
just verbalizing it, so.
I'm opposed to that because I think the site plan is integral to some of the design functions that tamper the intrusive nature of the special land use. And so I like them to be connected.
Together, yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
do you think, sir, I forgot your name now.
Great meeting.
Yeah. I forgot mine as well. Do you think that we can work this out? I mean, I think we're moving in the same direction. We're talking technicalities here of the development agreement, part of the site plan, part of the special land use agreement. But I think we're moving to resolve this to the owner's satisfaction, I hope, the residents' satisfaction, and we're crossing Ts and dotting Is, and we're trying to get this through as quickly as we can. You know, and also, and I'm not, you know, asking for, you know, any alms or to be thrown up here or anything like that, but you got 3 new people up here who are trying to work and make this work, believe it or not, as best we can, and without putting ourselves in some kind of danger for, you know, just shooting from a, what do you say, your foot or something like that, I don't know, from the hip. we wanna make sure that this is good for the residents, you know, we want your resident, or at least your business resident, you know. So we wanna make sure it's good for you, we wanna make sure it's good for the residents living adjacent to you, the people that are gonna suffer, maybe if there's some unwarranted traffic that is coming your way that we'll never be able to stop once it happens. That's the problem. If we make a mistake on something now, it's made, and it isn't gonna be reversed. It doesn't happen that way. So, anyways, I don't think we're asking for anything unreasonable if we try and get this all done on the agenda for quick approval next month. I mean, if we all think that's possible, you know, Brian, do you think we can do this?
Well, if you're gonna table it tonight, actually, the term is postponement.
Yes,
So
it
that
is.
way it's open-ended, so they
Yes.
can take the time to submit it. It's a quick turnaround if you table it to the next meeting, like something like that. So that's tabling it to a date certain. You have to postpone it, that gives them
Actually, it's
the
the reverse. The
opportunity.
postponement's a date certain.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
Well, not according to our clerk, so.
Well, according to Robert's Rules of Order.
But, you know, the point is to postpone it, to give them a chance to get these conditions fixed, then they can come back, so.
But I want to give them something to hang
Or schedule a
on.
special meeting.
I want to
We have
give you
processes.
something to hang on that, you know, it's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, we do have some financing issues that, you know, and I understand you need to do due diligence, Sharon, I don't mean to at all dispute that, but, you know, we have some issues, well, and we have worked very hard over the last 2.5 months to address the concerns that we heard last time. And I think they showed their good faith in doing that. And to answer your question, Mr. Stewart, I don't hear anything that's being discussed that we can't work through. We did see the engineer's suggestions, my clients are fine with that with regard to the entrance. And the rest of it are just details.
Okay, well, just one more then question. Dick, we can work through this, right?
Of course.
He just said we can work
Let
through
me
it.
just say one thing, though. 2 months has passed, and we haven't had a single meeting about this. Many of the issues that I raised in my review and the issues you have raised were in my previous review, about the lighting plan, for example.
Yes.
I mean, talking to a neighbor about a lighting plan is laudable, but convincing me that the ordinance requirements are met is something completely different. So, in all due respect, 2 months has passed, and it hasn't been because of the township delaying anything. These could have been resolved prior to this. I would have been happy to meet and offer some suggestions, my concerns were expressed directly to their representative before this thing was even submitted, because of my concern about the neighborhood.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry about the time frame, but this was before this commission in November, and here we are in February.
So what would fix this?
I'd like to make a motion.
Have a meeting
Mr.
tonight
Chair.
or after or tomorrow morning or?
No.
Mr. Galley?
It's, we'll have a meeting after we get, when you commission, you make your decision here about what you're gonna do. To postpone it, and then they'll have to schedule a meeting with us and resolve these issues.
Mr. Galley?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion, PC file number 2023-013, petitioner Triad Investments. I motion that we postpone the file in order to give the petitioner and consultants time to address the Carlisle report on the screening wall, visibility on Pelton, possibly relocating the fence on the Old Vista side, to confirm that the solid wall is decorative on both sides, and investigate the use of a knee wall between the existing tree berm on the Pelton Road side. Also create the development agreement, which addresses the parking deviation considerations and the operating agreement between the two facilities and the two properties. Also the lighting plan, expanding dumpsters hour, comments on, comments on no use of outdoor seating, and conform to the submitted site plan.
Can I add?
That's it.
Did you cover the Pelton Road entrance?
Nope.
That was in there?
Possible addition of entry and exit modifications on the Pelton Road entrance.
Dumpster schedule or improvement.
That was in there. That's my motion.
Mr. Ritchie?
Yeah, I was wondering, did we cover hours of operation to make sure they don't overlap as well?
Yes,
Okay,
I had that in the
saw
operating
that.
agreement and hours of operation.
very good. I'll support that.
Who's, Melinda, will you take roll?
No, postponement, you can.
Oh, you don't have to on a
Yeah.
postponement?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
We have to vote.
You have to do a voice vote.
Yeah, you have to.
Oh,
Yea or
okay.
nay. Yeah, yea or nay.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is PC file 2024-001, revisions to section 2.02, definitions of section 5.10, housing occupation, in order to regulate short-term rentals, and a new chapter 10 article, short-term rental housing ordinance.
See, this is when the engineer gets to go home.
There you go.
And we're gonna make this really long.
No, oh man, oh man, oh man. Well, this is just an introduction of this subject tonight for the benefit of the commission, because I'm not expecting anything other than maybe some quick feedback, and we'll need to come back to this issue. But as you know, the issue of short-term rentals, which has meant is basically people renting out their residence for a short-term period for vacationers or whatever, you know, is a phenomenon that's happening all over the state, and it's been a huge controversy in this state. The state legislature, at least 3 times that I'm aware of, has tried to usurp local authority by passing legislation that would define short-term rental as a residential use of property. And obviously many more resort-type communities really experience some serious difficulties with this, but so do other places, and apparently you are now. We obviously, our office is in Ann Arbor, and they've had a serious problem in Ann Arbor. We actually did the study and helped Ann Arbor write regulations, because when you got a big 100,000 foot, a seat stadium, and that's by the actual seats, not by the construction code. You tend to attract a lot of people on Saturdays, and so short-term rentals became a big issue there. But it's become an issue in many different places, and it's become a major battleground, because you have responsible owners and you have owners that are not so responsible. One of the major issues that has occurred because of it has been the fact that unregulated, these dwellings actually become a business. They're not a place where somebody lives. They're simply a place that somebody owns and rents out on this continuous basis, on a short-term rental basis. And in an unregulated fashion, it can be a real problem. So I've been contemplating this. We've written regulations for a number of communities, but I started thinking about this in a little different way, and I came across an approach that actually Grand Rapids used, and I think it's actually brilliant. I think the idea is that we define this as a home occupation. Home occupations require it be occupied, it be a residence that is occupied, and that home occupation is operated by the residents of that structure. And so recently, we modified our home occupation ordinance to recognize home offices as Class 1, and then a different time of home occupations that have more extensive activities as a Class 2. Class 1 were permitted as of right, because we have literally hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people working out of their homes, especially post-COVID. Class 2, we know that that those are potentially have greater impacts. Those require a special land use. And what I'm recommending is we develop a third category of home occupation and call it short-term rental. And I've provided some standards that will apply to it in the zoning ordinance, but even more importantly, I'm also recommending a general ordinance be passed that requires these to be registered and comply with certain requirements, and register for a period of time and certain requirements, and then have some enforceability if the nuisance standards associated with this are not met. Right now, our residents have no recourse. Now, they will have a recourse if they have a neighbor who is using their house as a short-term rental, and especially if it's being used strictly as just a short-term rental and there's nobody living there. Those are the worst kind of situations. Because, you know, somebody that lives in that house is gonna take, I think, my experience has been, they're gonna be more vigilant about who they let in there for a short-term rental, whether it's just a room or it's a weekend or whatever the case might be, than an absentee owner. So my approach here is simply a two-pronged approach. Amend the zoning ordinance to define these as a home occupation so that we clearly establish that the principal use is still as a residence, and that the short-term rental is a home occupation only to be operated by the resident of that structure. And tie it to a regulatory ordinance that requires registration, requires certain standards to be met that are enforced by the building official and the zoning official, and then the township has a means to monitor this. One other very important thing about all these ordinances is that there has to be a registered agent, so that anybody that has a potential issue is notified of who that agent is, and that agent is required to respond, and I can't remember what I put in here, but within so much time. The owner can be the registered agent, or they could have a real estate agent be a registered agent. Doesn't matter. They can have their son or daughter be the registered agent. But there has to be identified registered agent with the township and posted in the residence, so that if there is a problem, there's somebody that's going to take care of the problem. So that's, in a nutshell, is what I'm suggesting. Mr. Chairman, you have a question down here.
Joe?
Would it require the owner to be a resident of the property?
Yes.
Okay, and then would that resident lose their PRE status with the assessing office, where they now get taxed for their education?
You know what, that's a great question. I've talked to our assessing department about that, and that's really up in the air right now at the state of Michigan, whether, you know, to the extent that they maintain their principal residence, yeah.
Yeah, exemption.
It hasn't been, the
Resolved
state's
yet.
punted on it at this point.
Okay.
Can you just, for the less informed, can you maybe expand on that a little bit more? What is this?
What Mr. Sucre was asking was, will they lose their tax exempt, their homestead exemption?
Oh.
Okay, because they're running a business out of that. And to the extent that any other home occupation would be subject to, in jeopardy, they would be the same. But at this point in time, according to the assessing department, the state has not made any kind of ruling on that, and at this point, they're not in any jeopardy of losing that.
Good.
But I will tell you, if it's a non-owner occupied unit, it is not a residence.
No, it isn't.
You know, it's not subject to homestead exemption.
That's right.
And this is the kind of thing that I'm strongly recommending to you to consider, the fact that those are the types of circumstances where you have a problem. Where you could have a problem. You know, whether you have a problem, I know we've heard about, you know, some things in Thorndere or whatever, but if you're gonna have a problem, it's gonna be when you don't have owner occupancy and you have absentee ownership and nobody monitoring the property, and you don't have an ordinance.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Just a quick follow-up. As long as the assessing department is looped into the paperwork on this, because, you know, if there was a PRE on the property and then somebody moves out and becomes an Airbnb, yeah. You know, the assessing department, it's up to them to go and enforce and remove that exemption. You know, the homeowner doesn't have to remove their
Correct.
exemption.
And right now, they're not.
Yeah, right, I know.
Part of legal wrangling that's still going on, isn't it? I think it's been going on.
Yeah,
different
I
things
mean,
for a number of years
ad
now.
nauseum, frankly, at the legislature. They should just stay out of this. I mean, it's simply been lobby money that have influenced them. It's come up before them 3 times. Fortunately, the organizations like the Municipal League amazingly have partnered with the Hotel Association, because you know, short-term rentals don't pay the same hotel tax. And, you know, the large companies like VRBO and those other things are, you know, claim they're not funding this, and they may not be, but the fact of the matter, there's been a lot of lobby money behind trying to influence the legislature to classify these as a residential use of property. And think about that. That means in your neighborhood that you could have a residence next door to you where there's nobody living and it's simply being used as a short-term rental. That to me is not a residential use of property. And I think the legislature's been dead wrong about this.
So this would exclude somebody from buying a home strictly for the purpose of short-term rental.
That's correct. Unless they're gonna live there. I mean, if they're gonna live there and they wanna do a short-term rental and they comply with this ordinance, they can do so legally.
Do they have to be there while it's renting? Could they?
No.
Could this be a snowbird
That's,
and they rent it the whole time they're in Florida?
well, the period of time, there's a limited period of time.
28 days.
Correct.
Yeah, but as long as that multiple people during that whole period?
Yeah, that's
They
possible.
can do that?
Yeah.
As long, that, so.
And we could restrict that further, Mr. Chairman, if that's the commission's wishes. In terms of we've written ordinances that have a total number of days.
Does that get
Yeah.
into the issue of whether their primary residence is in Florida or here?
I don't think, well, with home occupations, we've never made that distinction. I mean, as long as
Okay.
it is a residence where they live, we've never made that kind of distinction. That'd be pretty hard.
So there's really no specified number that they have to be living there for a certain number of days. It's kind of
Yeah.
general.
No, but we really could be more restrictive on the number of days that a short-term rental can be, the total number of days that it can be rented.
I think accounting standards are actually only 2 weeks. I think it's pretty lenient, that you have to reside in a residence
Oh, yeah?
for your primary.
Hmm.
But that's, sticks with me. for
You
some reason.
have another comment down the other end of the table.
I would just like to ask, would this require, for instance, an annual permit for this home? So that if things went awry, you wouldn't necessarily.
No, the
approve
permit
it?
is good for 2 years,
Okay,
but it does require it be renewed.
okay.
But it can be revoked if there are violations during that 2-year period.
Who enforces it?
It would
Just
be
the police or-
the building department and the zoning, the planning department.
So part of I think the verbiage said that was it a fee mentioned, not a specific fee.
I'm sorry.
What we're doing potentially is adding some additional ordinance. My concern is always for the township enforcement. We're giving however many enforcers we have, 1 or 3 or 5, we're giving them more work to do.
I understand.
Right? So is there a fee-based structure?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. One of the other things that the township is considering is a rental housing program, actually. Many communities have that. It came before the township board a couple of months ago. That's a much more in-depth issue, but if the township does proceed with that, there will be need to have a rental housing inspector. That same person could be the inspector of short-term rentals also. But yeah, there's no question, there's gonna have to be fees, and, you know, the township may need additional help.
And will
Belinda?
this, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Will this be available for all residents of Independence Township, or will there be like an entertainment overlay where you can only do this within these boundaries?
It is intended, because we have single-family residences all over the township, it would be intended for the entire township, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would this apply to multifamily?
I did not include multifamily, we could.
It wasn't clear to me that it
Yeah.
didn't eliminate
I
it.
mean, it doesn't necessarily eliminate it. I mean, I don't think, have we ever had an application for home occupation in a multifamily residence? That I can remember, but there's no reason why we can't be inclusive in that regard.
My question is is what's driving this? Has there been an extraordinary amount of complaints? I know I've heard of one case in particular. What's to deviate this from laws and ordinances that don't already exist? For example, there's a year rental next to me. The guys don't take care of the house, the owner doesn't care, he lives in Texas. It's got weeds growing.
That's why you have
There's
a
our
rental
ordin-
housing ordinance.
There's our ordinance. You know, do we need an extra ordinance? If the guy's out in his backyard firing a shotgun off at 2 AM, I call the cops. It's a police action.
Yeah.
So are we duplicating this for stuff we already have?
No, but
on
we
the
don't
books?
have though.
Well, so if it's an obnoxious party house rental, you call the police. If the house isn't being taken care of, it's dilapidated, there's dogs tied up outside, whatnot, you call the police or the township to come, noxious weeds ordinance.
Yeah.
I guess what,
But if it's a rental, we don't have, the thing is that the ordinances that we have are not sufficient to regulate rental housing. They just aren't. That's why you adopt a rental housing ordinance and you adopt the 2022, I can't remember the code, property maintenance code, which then allows you to regulate. Now, you're not enforcing building codes, Brian. You're enforcing the property maintenance code. And think about this. We haven't had, except for the 2 apartment projects that are empty nester projects, on Deer Hill and down on Clintonville. You haven't had an apartment built in this community for 25 years. That tells you how old multiple family housing is in this community. Drive up and down Dixie Highway. Most of the housing stock is even older than that. And here's the problem. When the building official gets a complaint about rental housing, the codes, the Michigan Housing Code requires them, it requires him to do something about it. Well, he has no tools in his toolbox to do anything about it because we don't have a rental housing ordinance. So, it's a problem in a lot of communities whose housing stock is aging.
so can I back up on that 1 second?
Sure.
So your roof's falling in and there's animals everywhere and you're the homeowner. It is a blight ordinance.
Then you do
There's a-
have unsafe building code requirements.
It's a rental house and you have the same condition. You can't enforce it?
We're limited.
I don't understand that. They're still an owner.
If you don't have if you're not enforcing an up-to-date property maintenance code, and right now we're updating the 2005 code, and you don't have a specific, and if it's not owner occupied, what recourse does the tenant have? The tenant has no recourse, other than to move out. They can complain to the township, but unless they can find a.
But your enforcement
excuse
action's
me,
on the
if they
owner
can
of the
find
property.
if they can find a building code violation, that is enforceable. But if they can't get into the property to find conditions that don't meet the property maintenance code, you can't do anything about it. You can't, without a rental housing ordinance, you can't get inside the residence.
No, and you can just go in a primary residence of a person?
You can't do that either.
So, again.
And for what purpose?
I mean, I'm just trying to get to, like I said, to the driver of it. Not saying it's a bad idea. I, read through it. I agree with some of it I don't agree with. It's just, I'm just coming at it from the angle, more government isn't always better.
Mhm.
Again, if it's a party house,
we're
you
already
call the
being
police.
accused by a trustee of being the least regulated township, the least regulated community in Oakland County.
In my opinion, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's run with it.
Okay, anybody
I want
else
some-
have questions?
Again, there might be some good parts and some bad parts to it.
Yeah.
If there's one house that's getting a lot of complaints, does that warrant burdening 35,000 people in Independence Township with more government?
Well, Brian,
That's all I'm saying.
you have a little more knowledge about, we're not just talking about one.
No. No, I will say, though, that we've had complaints about one particular one in in particular, but this is, if you were to look on Virgo's map, there's
Mhm.
hundreds of these
Mhm.
in the township right now.
No, and being selfish, we looked at one because we had exchange students and a family was coming in from Spain for his graduation and they wanted to stay a month. And when we go to resort towns, of course, we stay in
Sure.
short-term rentals. But I was like, hey, we've never checked around here, let's pull it up. And, there wasn't a lot of them, but sure, there was a handful that were available, but.
Well, and the thing about this doesn't prevent it. I mean, this will not prevent that. And it will not prevent responsible owners from doing this if they want to do it. But it does protect the people that are going to be the short-term tenant, and we're talking about protecting neighbors here. That's what we're talking about.
But I mean, I guess when, I go to visit my kids in their college towns and stay for football games, if it's a problem with the rental, I don't ever think about calling the local city or the local township. I call the owner, hey, why doesn't the stove work? I'm not going down, Mr. Oppman, come fix my, I don't.
And that's why a resident
If it-
agent is required. But might not always be the case.
Yeah, and I don't know what the laws are where we've.
I mean, you obviously can rent more expensive places,
Yeah.
Brian.
It's,
Mr. Ritchie?
it's been some pretty sketchy ones.
You done, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think it's a growing issue, and I think it behooves us to take some action to mitigate any potential issues with residents around these places, so I think, I guess, I'm in favor of less government too, but like I said, I do see this as an issue that's growing, and it might be better to address it now than wait for more issues to come up, so that's my opinion.
Anybody else?
Is that 28 days out of the year?
No, it's 28 days. That's generally the definition of a short-term rental is no more than 28 days at a time. And I think we can refine that a little bit more, but you've given me some ideas about that. There's no magic about that, but most, it's intended to avoid the month-to-month rentals that you often do get with some regular rental, under some rental contracts. So the state began identifying it when they started to contemplate legislation as a short-term rental as anything that is rented for 28 days or less. Obviously, most of them are done much shorter periods of time than that.
I have a number of questions. Does the owner, you said that they don't necessarily have to stay there while it's being rented, but is an owner allowed to rent out a bedroom within their house?
Yes.
Or a portion of their house?
Yes.
Under this? Okay.
Let my kids know right away.
Yeah. We have a property in Port Sanilac we do Airbnb out.
Mhm.
And in the city of Port Sanilac, they have an ordinance that the local agent must be within 30 miles.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember. I thought I put something like that in.
You've got a response time, but my
Yeah.
question is, what does respond mean?
Like I said,
Okay. We can do that. And I've seen ordinances like that too.
I had questions on, what are we gonna, we require a floor plan and a proof of homeowner's insurance. Are we really gonna, I just question what value that provides to us.
Well, I mean, you don't have to. I mean, it's simply to ensure that the place is insured and that, that's another level of security for the people that are staying there.
Okay, that's why you're doing it, to protect me,
Mhm.
okay. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's about it, yeah. Anybody else?
Just maybe one drive-by comment. If you're driving through the neighborhood, it sounded like the proposal would have the ordinance stamped on the outside of the house. Is that right? Could it not be stamped on the inside or placed?
Trying to
'Cause
remember.
then, to me, it would be almost advertising a location as a target
Yeah.
for robbery or something.
I'll check that. I
Okay.
think, the rules and the notification, I know had to be posted inside, but I don't remember that.
Okay.
I'll,
Maybe I could have misread it.
yeah, I'll double check that.
I suspect we'll have, if we move down this road, we'll have complaints about this ordinance.
You will.
Yeah, and there is a lot of opinion out there that Airbnbs have driven up property values.
You will.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you will, because that's been our experience everywhere. By the same token, you get complaints
If you
from the
don't-
people that are not doing it
Yeah.
in neighborhoods.
If there's no other comments from the commission, this is a public hearing, correct?
No,
No,
not a public
it's-
hearing.
it's-
This was
No,
just
I-
presented
I-
for
I
information
put it in the
purposes.
wrong spot.
Yeah, this is just for information
Introduction.
purposes, to get comments from you. I will make some revisions to this.
Just a minute.
Because it was
Did-
posted as a public hearing.
Hold on, okay? Go ahead.
And I will be making revisions of this and resubmitting it back to the commission. Okay.
Even though this is not a public hearing, I think it is prior practice that we allowed people to comment on things on the agenda, so I will ask for comments. Name and address.
Peter Lutzner, 8620 Sequoia Court, Clarkson. I studied the document. I think it's a good document. I think a regulation, even so I agree, less government is better, may help, but I have a couple concerns, and you picked on some as well. Like, I don't think it forces the owner to live there, like the snowbirds. You know, you will have people that live there in Florida, and they don't live there. So I think it's, the way it's written is, I don't want to say useless, but you don't gain oversight. Yeah. That's one concern, and you brought it up as well. The violations is something that I wonder how you want to enforce it. You know, we live in a neighborhood. There is a short-term rental that has created 21 noise complaints to the police department.
Wow.
But the township told us there is no problem of noise because there was no citation, right? So the police department is not passing out citation of the first offense, right? But it's the second offense. But the next day, there is a new group there that creates noise, and this has been going on now for 2 years. So it was not. We were not able to reach any solution there. And the same is here. How do you want to enforce all your articles in there with parking? Yeah. So what do you want to do if there's not a no parking sign? Yes, they point out they have per bedroom a parking, but it doesn't mean they park there. Yeah. So it's a good idea, but I question the validity of this being enforceable in many points. And and posting a sign outside of the house that the neighbors may not be on vacation or something, whatever it says, is not practical, and I don't think it's a good idea.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to speak. I hoping
Name and address.
that would be the case. Tom Neal, I'm 8651 Thandera Boulevard. I've been a resident in the township for 30 years. Been on the Thandera Park Homeowners Association board for over 25 years. Am an adjoining neighbor to one of the biggest pain in the butt short-term rentals that we have in the township. And this has been a 2-year process to get to this point here. I agree that there needs to be some discussions on long-term as well. And that was on the December 6th agenda and fell off of it and hasn't resurfaced. So hopefully we'll see something with that coming up as well. But as far as the short-term rental, yeah, it's a big issue. As Mr. Carlisle said, it's all over, and we've seen it. And when you have responsible homeowners that do what they need to do, it's not a problem. But it's all the other people out there that that create the issues for everyone else, and it becomes a major problem. in our case, we're dealing with a place that is renting out for $1,000 a night, up to 10 guests with another $100 per guest, up to 16. 9 cars, advertising to friends and family right on their on the VRBO and Airbnb sites. You know, they're offering pool table and darts and a spacious deck and a great place for remote work and self check-in and shampoo and conditioner and body soap and canoes and kayaks and a barbecue grill with 5 king beds, 1 queen bed, 3 single beds, 1 sofa bed, 1 couch, and 2 air mattresses. Okay, they're touting that they've hosted people, guests from Henry Ford to Thomas Edison. If I worked in the hotel industry and this continued on unregulated, I would be a very unhappy commercial business, because there are people trying to run commercial businesses within residential neighborhoods for sole profit. So when Mr. Carlisle proposed a 2-tier approach, I really think it is a good approach. I think the point of the landlord living on site will take care of a very large portion of the issues. And personally, I would say to tighten that up a little bit more would be good, because again, there's so many little loopholes that people can find that I'm going to have some agent and I'm going to spend half the year in Florida, and you know, in our case, it's just been someone that doesn't live there, and they just have not demonstrated very much care or concern for the neighborhood, and it's been a real problem. This particular residence, although only owned by the new owners for the past 2 years, has got consent judgments and declaration of restrictive covenants that the township has decided not to enforce for, I'm not sure what reasons, but they did enforce them in previous boards. But nonetheless, this will certainly help, and hopefully it'll give Brian some teeth to get out there and do what he finally wants to do. And so I represent a large group of people, not all who are here tonight, obviously, but certainly would like to see it restricted even further as far as the permanent residency is concerned. But I think that is really a good approach. I would propose that the 2 guests per bedroom, you know, that a cap be considered. I don't think it's the smaller places. I don't think it's the people that are renting out a couple of place, you know, bedroom or a couple of bedrooms is a problem. But like the place across the street from us, if you look on the assessing site, it says 13 bedrooms. Now they advertise 5, but you know, if we do 2 per bedroom, we're still looking at a pretty large crowd of people, and they're taking business away from the hotel here on the corner. So I would even propose looking at an upper limit on that, 2 per bedroom up to 3 bedrooms, and maybe 1 per bedroom, couple beyond, 6 to 8 people. But you know, I think it's great for people to use their land how they want to use it, their homes. But there is a point where if they want to run businesses, they need to do it in the appropriate areas. There is a lot of, if you go on Airbnb and VRBO, you can rent out everything from a yurt to a tent to a trailer to a fort in the backyard to anything. It would be nice to see maybe even a little bit clearer language in there. Maybe I'm missing how it's stated, but that would be a suggestion that I would ask this group to consider as you provide input to Jose and the trustees. We have, within where I am at 8651 Thendera, 2 short-term rentals within 500 feet of us, and from what we've been told, there's going to be a 3rd one within that same 500 feet. What we lovingly call the party lodge is after they got cited on their violation for the construction they were doing without a permit. They did pull their permits now, but from what we hear, they're getting the other side ready for who knows how many bedrooms worth of more people coming in there. So I don't take this lightly. I have a lot of appreciation for limited government, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of benefits to be gained by this for the betterment of our community. And those were just a few things that I wanted to express on behalf of some of the other residents. But I think another issue that Peter nicely brought up was I like the 3 strikes ability, but I would like to, if possible, have some clearer language on that. What is a strike? We had neighbors 2, 3 a.m. in the morning all summer long calling the police. Oakland County Sheriff shows up. Sometimes it's quiet because, oh, we see headlights coming, what's that, you know? I'm sure there's been a lot of, hey, the neighbors are persnickety, whatever they want to call us, you know. They don't want to hear screaming, louding, hooping, yelling noises at 3 in the morning. But nonetheless, 21 times they were called out in the last year and a half. Not a single ticket was issued, so I would hope that that would be well over the 3 strikes, but I don't know. If we have a strike being a ticket, I don't know, we might have to revisit our noise ordinance then or something, but that's kind of that's a real issue and a real concern, because the process is to warn. Same thing, the owners went out there, they were burning a bunch of construction material. Again, they do not really care about the community. They left and they had a 2-foot flame fire burning. And my wife and I looked out and we're like, what is going on here? We just saw them all drive off. Nothing, went over there, nobody. Called the fire department, they went out there. This place is costing the township a lot of money, by the way, between the police and fire, but extinguish a fire, same thing, warning, you know? So that's just a concern as well as this moves forward, but I appreciate, you know, the time, you know, I can't tell you, I'm sure Brian could attest for the many hours of communication on this, but it's a problem, and I'd like to see Independence Township get ahead of the game. Let's be a little bit more prepared, and not to mention the safety and the welfare of the people renting out these places, okay? We had a daycare several years back. 25 years ago, we had to jump through a million hoops to do that, and you have a short-term rental, it's like, okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Carlisle shares concern about a cap on the number of people that can be there,
Yeah.
some kind of
Yeah,
upside limit.
I think these are all good comments, and
Anybody else in the audience? On the commission?
Well, one question, when a complaint is made to the sheriff's department, how do you find out about it, or do you find out?
We don't.
There needs to be, it seems like there should be some way that the residents can complain to you, and that could be a strike,
but
or,
we don't have anything to enforce right now. That's the problem.
I get it,
Yeah,
okay.
and when the sheriff's office has an issue, our prosecuting attorney, if it gets to that point, gets all that data.
Yeah. I mean, the sheriffs are going to enforce just normal nuisance type complaints, noise.
It seems like you should know about it even though it's not ticketed, but if there's a complaint, it seems like you should know about it.
That's not how it works, man.
Yeah, unfortunately,
Anywhere.
we got a large township,
That's why there's nothing possible.
but, you know, an ordinance like this, however, could trigger, that communication now will trigger, you know, the sheriff, you know, Brian's office can work with the sheriff's department so that they do know when there is a registered short-term rental and they've gotten a complaint. Now we've got an enforceable incident upon which action can be taken, if you pass the ordinance.
So you'll take the feedback and redraft and come back to us at some future meeting?
I will.
I have one question. These folks, are they here for Pine Knob, or do they, it's just,
If you read some of the reviews, you know, it's like murder mystery weekends, or, you know, a lot, or coming for weddings, so all over the place, yeah. I mean, it's almost surprising that they're getting $1,000 a night, and people are renting it out, you know.
But the thing is, it's an example that it's not enforceable when you put together. You know, it's a prime example for 2 years that the township has not done anything.
Well, I just found out
Okay.
about this, so, you know.
Okay.
Well, that's.
And that's the night I.
Are we-
It would be a little scary because we were asked by Jose to provide audio, which we provided audio, date, timestamp, pictures, which we provided, all these different accounts that were supposedly going back to you over the last year to collect additional data to enforce that. Oh, well, to the attorney, I guess you're not the attorney that's going on.
Okay.
Not to me.
All right.
I just want to add to Belinda one thing too, and thank you for this extra comment. Another issue is one that, you want to come back up?
Please.
Keep me honest here, right? No, I was just gonna say, the other thing that's just kind of crazy about it too is that even the owners, they don't even get a call from the police. So it's the residents at 3 a.m. waking up, really not wanting to have a confrontation, but yeah, they call the police. The police go there and they tell the short-term renters, quiet it down. Township doesn't know about it. The people that own the place, they don't even get disturbed by it. They don't even know. So yeah, it's just a real challenge, and there's a lot of people that have had, you know, a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of difficult times with us over the last couple of years. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is regular business. There is none.
Hello?
Approval of the minutes.
Speak.
Was somebody online trying to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay, name and address, please.
Tiffany Robertson, 6211 Walden Road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just really quickly, because I didn't hear the answer about the occupancy requirement in the ordinance. Is there going to be discussion about how many people should be staying in each residence? Because just thinking of like sewer usage and water usage, those things are impacted.
Mr. Carlisle, you'd like to address that?
Yes, the answer to that is yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. As I said, regular business, we'll move on to approval of the minutes, December 14th.
I'll move to approve the regular meeting minutes of December, was it December 14th?
That's what it says in the.
2023?
I'll support Mr. Ritchie's motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Consultants report, master plan update.
Yeah, I actually have two things to report. The master plan is a draft. A plan was submitted to Brian just for review and comment. It's going to be coming before the commission in March. We're making corrections to the document, formatting it, and you will have that in your hands in March. I don't suggest at the March meeting that you'll be prepared to discuss it, but we will have it in your hands for you to begin to review that, and you will make the decision as to how you want to proceed on that. Okay?
Can I ask you a quick question on that?
Yeah.
I guess, comment and question, and not saying it has anything to do with you, you can only put in the master plan the information you're given. It just seemed like an entirely different process than the last time the master plan was done. That being said, last time you used to pass back and forth, this is what we're changing in red. I mean, is there gonna be a supplement document,
Yeah,
or are we just?
We'll have to figure out some way to inform you, but Brian, that one, and it's a very good comment, this has taken much longer, but remember, we've had, from the time we started to now, we've had 3 supervisors.
Yeah, no, and I'm not blaming you. You
No,
can
no,
only
no.
do as
But-
instructed. I get it.
But, you know, I mean, this would not have been the way I would have wanted to see it. It's primarily because I think some of the other, you know, issues and activities that have happened within the township this should have been to the planning commission much sooner than this.
I just remember
I think what you're saying
every
is,
month there were red line documents
Well,
passed back and
And
forth,
and that's right,
it
and
was-
that's
it
still
was
going to
fluid.
happen. And basically, that's still what's going to happen, because you're
Mhm.
going to see the document.
I would just appreciate changes, because if I get a master plan that's already been changed, how do I know it was changed? You know?
Okay.
It's a laborious
like
process.
the old and new, like a summary sheet of the changes or something too.
Well, there's going to be some different, there'll be some things that are just different, because we're reformatting things and providing graphic illustrations that are better, and we'll be able to provide you
Yeah.
with.
Just with a good
Yeah.
explanation's fine.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll do
best
that.
you can.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman? There was one other item. I hate to keep you.
No,
Okay,
yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Is this under discussion, or is this
No,
part
it's
of
still
the?
under planner's report.
Okay.
In Supervisor Aliaga called me the other day and asked me, he became aware of this ordinance that had been proposed by now I can't find it, I just had it right in front of me.
In the
This-
minutes.
Huh?
I think it's in the minutes.
You know, this ordinance that had been proposed by the Open Space Committee regarding woodland protection. And we did have a conversation about it, Joe and I. I'm going to be a little more informal at this point, if it's okay. But a couple of things. You know, I am not authorized by the township to do work for individual board members or individual planning commission members or even committees without authorization. Now, I had certain authorization to work with the Open Space Committee to do their bylaws and things like that. But I was concentrating on getting your bylaws in order up to that point and, you know, didn't frankly realize that I had any authority at this point to review this woodland protection ordinance. He, supervisor, gave me that specific authority. I have looked at this, and essentially what it does, if I could put my hands on it, I had it right here in front of me. Essentially what this ordinance is proposing to do and is require compliance with woodland protection for any project for which a site plan is going to be submitted. And that in a nutshell is what it proposes, okay? There's some other provisions and things like that. Let me tell you why that won't work. First of all, it may be surprising for you to know, but not a great deal of property is owned in this township by speculators on a speculative basis. In fact, with the exception of Walden, which was owned by a property owner that's owned that property a long time, then bought by a developer, and obviously that was bought as an investment. The last number of pieces of property that have been developed have been owned by people like you. So they may clear the property, or they may be doing some clearance or tree things. They may not have any idea that somebody's gonna offer them, you know, money to buy their property to develop. So in essence, how would we know? How would we know at that time that somebody's gonna be submitting a site plan? So there's no way to enforce this kind of provision credibly. And frankly, even at that point, someone will always say, well, I didn't know, you know, I didn't know that I was going to, you know, end up developing my property, or somebody was gonna offer me money to develop my property. So I think this is it's a well-meaning approach, but it's just not, it's not workable. And I've said for years in this township, if you wanna have a woodlands ordinance, a woodlands protection ordinance, there are ways to do it. But this is not it. This isn't going, we just had, on an 8-acre piece of property on Clintonville Road, somebody cut down a substantial number of trees to build a beautiful, large house. Did we hear a single word about that? Not a word. It's 8 acres. This property was less than 2 acres. So if it's really the desire of this community to have a woodland protection ordinance, there are ways to do it. I've written many of them. I've consulted with many, many communities and written and been an expert witness on defending their ordinances that are effective approaches if that is indeed what you want. But this particular kind of measure isn't going to do anything because it's not
question.
enforceable.
Quick question.
Yeah.
You say it requires a site plan, so as a builder, every single thing I do requires a site plan nowadays. So if I'm doing a bathroom addition, and there's a tree, an oak tree where I'm putting my bathroom, they can say, no, you're cutting down a tree, you can't put a bathroom on your house.
Well-
So this goes down to the
No,
minuscule
no, it
homeowner.
wouldn't require for
'Cause
a
it's a
plot plan, no. But it does, it says for any project that requires a site plan.
Well, we call them site plans still, even though they're one lot.
No, we don't.
Plot
It's not a site plan that the planning commission sees.
Well, and that was my distinction.
Yeah, that is the distinction.
That's my question.
No, that's clear in here. But I'm just saying, you have no way of knowing when trees are cut down on a property, when a site plan's ever gonna be submitted on that piece of property. It could be years. So I understand the intent, but the effectiveness of it is not gonna work. If you really want to have woodland protection, you have to have a woodland protection ordinance. Just like we've had a wetland ordinance for 45 years, and it's worked very well. So I'm happy to provide you with some examples, happy to provide the Open Space Committee with some examples. It's not something that I believe the Township Board is 100% in support of, but you know, we've faced that before, and if we have, you know, there are different approaches that are more potentially effective than what was proposed from the Open Space Committee. And this is no criticism of anybody, because I think it was well-intentioned, but I just know from experience that this is not gonna be the way to do it.
Is this
Can
in
you-
reaction to the Walden Road project?
Pardon me?
This is in reaction, the
No, actually, it's funny because I think it's in reaction to the clearing that was done on the Sashaba, the property on the opposite side. And frankly, this ordinance that was being proposed wouldn't even apply to that piece of property because that piece of property has an approved site plan. You know, I wanted to share with the commission the history behind that because a lot of the information that has been portrayed about that has not been accurate. In 2008, that property received site plan approval from the Planning Commission. With that site plan approval, the final site plan approval included a grading plan. Here's the grading plan. That owner was entitled to do that then and is now because they had a vested interest in this property because they developed the first phase of it, which was the Tim Hortons. They put the road in. By the way, the other part about this is, this property is governed by a consent judgment. And just for way of explanation, for those of you who may not be familiar with a consent judgment comes about as a result of litigation between two parties in which they agree to, or they consent to settle and enter into a judgment. I know, you had plenty of experience with that in Washington Township. So the point of it is, this property, as well as a couple of the other adjacent properties, were all part of an original consent judgment. Where that road went was dictated by the consent judgment by the township. And so consequently, that road can't go anywhere else other than where it is without amending the consent judgment. I have the minutes of that meeting, and I want to give you copies of it, because you'll see that at that meeting, the township attorney was at that meeting and explained all this to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission debated the entire issue and approved this site plan. So what is being done right now, you know, it'll be all determined when the township engineer inspects it, was all done in accordance with a site plan that was approved by the Planning Commission, albeit it was, you know, a number of years ago. But that's not unusual. You know, it took Oakhurst years to develop. Morgan Lake is still developing, and it started in 1991. So, factually, the information that has been presented is not correct. That site plan was approved, the Planning Commission approved it, the chairman of the Planning Commission at the time signed the site plan. I'll have it show you that person's signature. And the applicant had every right in the world to grade the site and got a grading permit, got a soil erosion permit from Oakland County, and here it is. Mr. Chairman. We're gonna have a problem with this.
Yeah.
Well, once they switch seats, it should be.
Yeah, we have to get a little camera over here to,
There you go.
yeah.
Okay.
But what, I'm confused as, you know, I know what what Jerry's proposal was.
Mhm.
And I never tied it to Tim Hortons' property and the road and anything like that. Why? I don't get that.
Well, this is exactly why this was proposed.
No, it wasn't.
Well,
No,
what else,
listen,
why else was it
I know it
proposed?
wasn't, because I'm on the committee, as you
Well,
know.
okay.
And Jerry proposed this as a solution to a very general problem in the township. It
That
had
was
nothing
not
to
how it
do-
was presented to the township board.
Well,
When the
but I
issue
don't know who
first came
presented
up.
it. Who
No,
presented
when it first came up, Ron was there, when this, about a woodlands ordinance first came up, that came from the open space committee, it wasn't that ordinance.
No, it was the
That
first
was the
one.
reason, that was the reason why that woodland protection ordinance was being proposed.
Right, because that was a crazy one. That was
So-
just stop any kind of tree
So-
cutting. That
so-
was silly.
so,
That was
so
silly.
that is, I'm saying that is why this ordinance was presented. Yeah, it's gonna apply everywhere, but that was the incident that.
Prompted Jerry to-
Prompted this
to
whole
expand
issue.
it, right.
And
I-
I'm
I
not
could see.
disagreeing with a woodland protection. I've written 3 of them for the township that have never been passed.
Yeah, but I mean, my only comment, and because we're gonna take this up, it's on the agenda for Wednesday, next Wednesday. Because Bill has some ideas about that too. You're on there, by the way. In terms of the location of the road and things like that, that was never a part of any discussion relating to that ordinance at all. Now, I think I know where that's coming from. I think we talked about this, who prompted that and what and why. And
Just look at
It had
social
nothing to do with
media.
trees. Nothing to do with
Look at
trees.
social media and you'll find out exactly where it's
Yeah,
coming
but
from, and
it's
most
nothing
of
to
what's
do with
been in it has
trees.
been inaccurate.
Yeah.
My point of it is you are now on a planning commission, you were all on a planning commission, and you now, you're making the decisions. And that planning commission back then made that decision and approved this site plan, and what the applicant did was in accordance. I mean, there might be some variations, and the township engineer will tell him, but this gave him the right to grade the property.
Yeah, but who's arguing about that? Except maybe one person.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. You're not gonna find anybody on ROAC, well, except one person.
Am I crazy here?
Well, you mentioned social media, and it's funny, I'm not on it, thank
Me neither.
God, but my wife is, and she reads me the comments on these Independence Township pages, and 99% of them are all just speculation and flat out wrong.
Yeah.
It's sad, really, that the right information doesn't get out there, and it's sad when somebody who knows the right information doesn't put the right information out there.
So, anyway, I think enough of this that has been said. I will, neither to bore you, but to inform you, I'm going to continue to provide this commission with facts, not speculation, not innuendo. And this is a particular case where what has been being said is factually incorrect. And someday, 10 years from now, people will be accusing you of the same thing.
I'm sure.
I won't be here to defend you.
Oh, come on.
Please do. You're not going anyplace.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, personally, I'm not a believer of crying over spilt milk. And I prefer moving forward and doing things right, putting them in place for the next project down the line. And as a member of ROAC, I think it would be nice to have some form of woodlands or ordinance. And I guess I'd ask you to send us some.
Yeah.
So we can review them.
Well, interestingly, the one I'm gonna send you, that some people may not like, but it's been a very effective ordinance in Troy.
Is it commercial,
It's-
commercial and residential both?
Correct.
Can we
Listen,
get it by
it will
Wednesday?
do no good to have a woodlands exclusively to commercial property. We just don't have enough here. Where the major issues come is with property that's gonna be developed for residential. It always has been.
Can we get a sample or something by next week, you think?
Yeah.
Did you mean
Oh, good.
existing
Okay, thanks.
residential? So you can't cut down the dead cherry tree and it's gonna fall on your house without a township permit kind of thing? That question.
Well, let's see what they look like. Okay, you done?
I have something I need to bring forward, and I'm similar to Dick. I'm gonna start, correcting things that are false. And, you know, I came across a post that was sent to me by a particular trustee and complaining that the planning department is picking on them. Because they went on our code enforcement website, which for transparency purposes shows you all the complaints currently or that are active in the township. And I just want to go through a little bit of history, and I'm not gonna get specific, but I think this person needs to understand a little bit of the history here of what's going on, and I think the public does too. He was, in 2022, he had a junk car on his property. He was notified and he complied just before the ticket was issued. 2017, he went to the Zoning Board of Appeals, Brian will probably remember this, for a new barn. Those permits are expired. The building permit. 2011, he built a swimming pool. It was approved by the building department. It's in front of the home. It's a violation of the ordinance. In 2013, a shed was issued. Shed permit. It's a land use permit. It's located in the side setback. 2024, we received a complaint just recently. That's what he's complaining about from a resident. And since we got a complaint formally, we have to act on it. We can't just look the other way because of this person's position. In 2022, the building official was driving by the nonprofit house being reconstructed on Sashabaw Road, known as the Bailey House. And he observed kids on the roof, no safety harnesses, and this is in conjunction with the high school. No safety harnesses, up on a roof, no scaffolding, saw blades wide open, no protection, open stairwells, other safety hazards, open-ended circuit boxes, all of these major problems if your child is working in that class. Because certainly I wouldn't want my kids on that roof. It's a pretty steep roof. And in 2024, in his commercial building, he put a new tenant in there without a change of occupancy. So this person can complain about us potentially picking on him, but you guys need to understand the facts, and the public does too, that, you know, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. So,
Brian, how many complaints did the township address last year? Over 400?
yeah, we
So
addressed,
this is hardly selective enforcement.
we addressed 480 complaints. We picked up well over 1,000 temporary signs around town. Actually, it's more like close to 2,000 that we picked up at street corners, etc. Off utility poles. We have ladders. We climb all over everything to get this stuff. So to say that we either don't enforce ordinances or don't enforce what the Zoning Board of Appeals does on a regular basis, or what the Planning Commission approves, is junk. And I think it's important for the new members too to understand that. You know, I think Brian can attest to all the ZBA cases we have. What's the first condition on all of them? Placement verification. So why? Because that ensures that what they approved gets put in the ground. And we don't end up with the Chase Bank down there built in the side yard setback down by CVS. So that's all I'm trying to do is just let you know what the planning department really does. And what we do is totally in conjunction with the building department. Dave back there, Moran, he's our building official. We work literally, we talk probably 25 times a day about stuff, and we're constantly going back and forth. And prior to us forming this building and planning department separate, we never had zoning compliance. Now we do. We make sure that a future Chase Bank that you all approve is built in the correct location. You know, so that's, I just felt like it's important for the new commissioners to know that, and really the public at large to understand that what you read in these groups, as Brian mentioned, none of it's true. So, and if you want to know what's the truth, nobody calls us to ask the truth. Or, you know, nobody calls me, nobody calls Dave to say, hey, is this really true or not? Nobody. And it's important that our doors are always open. So if you come in with a question, we're going to answer it. So I just wanted to point that out. I know it's late and we all want to get out of here, but I felt it important enough to correct this because it's a major problem. And unfortunately, too many people go along with it.
Yeah.
So.
Can I make one quick comment?
You bet.
I know that the building department is doing their job, because being a builder, every builder I run into, and some friends of mine that are builders, call me, hey, you're over in Independence Township, can you do me a favor and call that guy and see why he's, you know, knocking me down and making me do this? And I said, well, because he's making you follow the rules finally, right? So, I mean, you know, congratulations to you for enforcing the rules that should always be enforced. And you're not overburdening them, you're just making them be responsible.
That's the thing, is both of us play by the rules, and
which is commendable.
if you don't like it, go to the zoning board of appeals or something, you know, I mean, not build sheds in side yard setbacks,
William,
never to be looked at.
just a comment. Sharing information is valuable, so don't ever stop doing it. Seriously.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we don't reply on social media,
No, yeah,
because
no.
that's just ridiculous. That's what irks us as staff the most, is we wanna respond, you know, but we can't. And we can't ask our public relations people to do it either.
You need an agent.
I know what you're
Well,
talking
but we can keep the planning commission informed, especially as new commissioners, that, you know, there has to be a bond of trust. And that's why tonight I you know, strongly discourage you to just pass off to us. And I appreciate the fact that you didn't, you know, trying to enforce your conditions on the site plan. That really needs to be you, and you need to be convinced. And we'll, you know, work to see that that happens. But it's really, it puts us in a terrible position when we're asked, you know, to enforce these conditions of approval, and then sometimes people are disappointed that it's not what they thought it should be. So I appreciate what you did tonight.
especially when there's ambiguity
Yeah.
in some of the, you know, the conditions.
Yeah.
You know, you can give us a handful of conditions, we'll make sure that happens, as long as they're they're defined better, you know, so, and that'll get better with all of you as new commissioners, that'll get better as time
Hopefully
goes
all the
on.
meetings will not be this long, too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Some will be longer.
Go back and look at some of our old minutes, and they were a lot longer.
Discussion, anything? I think we had a lot of that.
Let's talk
I
out.
just wanted to say, welcome to the new members. You guys, I was very encouraged because you guys all spoke up today. A lot of times newbies want to wait a little bit before they speak up, but I'm very encouraged that all of you did speak, and good job today.
Thank you.
I do have a question. I came in and I said, you know, maybe we could all have dinner together, but then I think there is also an underlying rule that maybe we can't do that.
No.
Right.
10 grand
What
out of
is
the
that?
township's pocket.
Well, it's the Open Meetings Act.
Yeah.
Quorum
No,
and all that
is it
stuff.
up to 3 people, up to 4 people, or
Three.
any 2 people, or how?
Yeah, what-
Three.
Three.
3, 4 is considered a.
You know, and maybe something we'll look into is what we did at the last time we approved the master plan, is
Yeah.
bring in some pizzas and,
Yeah, we can do that, because you'll be deliberating in public.
Informal
Yeah.
meeting.
So here's my concern is that, for the new members, I am actually one of the new members. I think that in a professional environment, what I do when I hire people is I coach them, I train them. and I would like to be coached by someone or trained, or just have some experience sharing. So I'm trying to get there. I don't know if dinner's the way to start, or how to do that, right?
There's two really, I mean, we do training sessions for our commissions and our boards, but you also have a remarkable tool here in Michigan called Citizen Planner. You've been through it?
All of us have.
Speaking
Yeah,
of which,
You've
isn't
been
it
through it?
required?
You've been
It
through it?
is required in
I
our
mean,
bylaws.
you- Okay.
Yeah.
But we can also do a customized training session for you. And a lot of times sometimes I have somebody else in my office do them just so you see a fresh face. And we can do that.
And it's certainly true that the more meetings you go to, the more you pick up on certain things, and, you know, you get better. And it's understandable, and like, it's, as Ron said, it's rare when a new person comes in and is willing to speak up, and that's great, you know? Cause typically you kinda sit back for a few months, kinda let, you know, see how everybody has their thing that they talk about, and, you know, you get better.
Tom, did you
But-
say you did Citizen Planner? Linda, have you
I
done it?
have not.
Yep, yeah, I'll be sending you the info.
Is that online now?
Yeah.
It is,
You do
it's
it
all
online
online.
It's all online.
Or in classes.
I had to go to MSU.
There's an option to do that too.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
attend in person, but you can teach yourself online, it's very easy.
Very, very convenient and very good.
So what is the rule about 3 people? So if 3 of us went to lunch, it's okay, but if you get to 4, it's a,
Well, I
Then
mean,
you're a quorum of this commission.
okay, okay.
That's what you can't do.
I'll tell you what we'll do is, we'll get you a synopsis of what the Open Meetings Act,
Okay.
requires you to do, so that you know. But essentially is if you get together and you're talking about business, there's 3 of you, you're talking about planning commission stuff, you're violating the Open Meetings Act.
Well, what if you don't talk about planning committee?
Well, you're gonna be, we always get that. You are gonna be at social functions, let's say like a chamber function, and there may be 4 or 5 of you there. You know, that's understood, but you are not to deliberate township business in
Okay.
those kinds of settings.
So, social media obviously is a hot topic. You do not comment on projects that you are either gonna potentially look at and potentially review, or ones that are actively in front of you, period.
What about like business processes? Like generic processes? Like form-based planning, I think I learned about some
Form-based
concepts
code.
in the planner. Can we ask for another layer of guidance for, new building? Say, for example, I think it was one of you guys, I saw your interview, or wasn't a dissertation, it was just like a speech, right? When you stood up before the trustees, and you said you were previously involved with another planning commission, was it you?
I was,
Yeah,
yes.
was it, was it Grosse Pointe or Washington?
Joe was Grosse Pointe, I was
Yeah,
Washington Township.
so, you had mentioned kind of an idea I just wanted to ask about, I don't know how to ask, right? We don't necessarily, that I'm aware of, have some sort of form-based codes. If you have a building, it's gotta be this color, I'm not suggesting this, but it's just a concept, right? It's gotta be this color, it's gotta be this kind of style. How do we discuss that?
Well, you need to
You're
have,
looking at your watch, it's
you need to
time to go.
understand what it is, first of all.
Buzz.
And
Yeah.
that's the kind of educational process we can provide.
Yeah, and then if you have an idea that this is the forum, and or it's something that you talk to the chair about, and we can put it on the agenda.
The planning commission, we used to do it where I was, we would propose amendments to the ordinances all the time. We would talk about what you just said. What can we do to enhance the visible character of the building?
Yeah.
Well, and we learned a lot. It's gotta have a good purpose,
Yeah.
like wear and tear, maintenance.
Yeah.
You can't legislate personal appearance.
Or be supported by the master plan.
Sure,
A number of years ago, we talked about signs, and we
Yep.
kept wanting to get in, and we wanted to regulate what you put on a sign.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's, you know,
Out the
freedom of
window.
speech, you can't do that.
Yeah, same Supreme Court ruling that
Right,
took
so-
that one
Yes.
out. Joe?
Yeah, just as, we used to, at least, not on the planning commission there, but on the city council when I was there, we used to have what we call committee of the whole meetings, you know, which were informal. We all sit around a table, you know, we meet, it was public, but nobody ever showed up. And we had pizza and, you know, a pop, and you'd talk about
We can have
things
it-
like colonial themes and things like that in a very informal session, sort of what we're doing now, but we were around a table talking like it was a, you know,
Dedicated
school
workshop
project.
sessions,
Yeah.
Joe. I
Hmm?
mean, we can have dedicated workshop sessions.
Yeah, yeah.
We've had those several times in the past, so.
Yeah, I think those are very helpful, you know, when you got some issue you want to talk about, a specific
Yeah,
one, you want to thrash it out.
What's behind this is that there seems to be, save yourself, we're not elected officials. And so we do work for the public, and if we're making decisions that the public aren't happy, how do we reconcile our decisions with the, you know, the public, right? So maybe there's a way to do this. Maybe there's a way to discuss this openly.
Sure.
I don't know.
I would be very interested in pursuing workshops.
Yeah.
Everybody agree?
And we've had those many times in the past, so I have no
So-
problem with that.
Brian and Dick, can you guys, I don't know what it takes, you know, funding or whatever. but-
Well, usually what we do is we wait for a light agenda, and then we either do some training or we do things like that, so. You know, if we have nothing on the agenda, you know, except for a couple minor things, then,
You know, one of the
Just
first
a
ones that we
kind of
usually do are
discussion.
the basic planning workshop, and this is the one we do for Michigan Michigan Association of Planning, Michigan Townships Association, Michigan Municipal League, and I've done that many times, and it probably would be worthwhile doing that as a start, and then getting into some more specialized stuff. But one of the things that's in that particular workshop is effective decision-making and risk management. Those are two really key elements of that basic workshop, which would be helpful for the new members particularly. The decision, not that you're gonna, you know, but making effective decisions and managing risk, because you are in a position now where you're gonna make decisions that are potentially going to be challenged. So the more effective you are in making your decisions, and the more you document your decisions, and the more you rely on your master plan and your zoning ordinance and the recommendations from your experts, the better off you're going to be.
A clear example of that is a special land use. There's 8 criteria that have to be met for us to approve it. And if you're not gonna approve it, in your motion, we should
you better stay why.
state each one that's not met and the reason why. And
Right.
that's risk management or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, speaking about risk management,
Oh, and one
I do
other
have an
point.
hour's drive to get home.
One other point I was gonna, Thursday night is half-off pizza at the Hamlin Pub. So
Okay.
okay, next, motion for adjournment?
Motion to adjourn at 9:08.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Long time to sit.
It was a good meeting.
You're such an old man. Old man.